Chapter 1039. I'll make sure this little bastard dies a horrible death. The leader of the Gimdeo sect, Yang Baikuan, walked down from mid-air and went to the remaining disciples of the Gimdeo sect. His face was so dark that it was scary. After Ran Jianxian and Yang Baikuan met up, they turned around and looked at the 10th ring at the same time. Their eyes met. Both of their faces were trembling. Then, they turned around abruptly, swung their sleeves, and left quickly with the remaining disciples. Countless people had different feelings when they saw this scene. However, they all knew that the Gimdeo sect and the 7-Star Sword School had no chance at all in this year's Alliance Conference. The 20 most outstanding disciples of the two sects had died in the ring. The two sects no longer had any chance to compete. The Bawang sect is destined to become famous in this year's Alliance Conference. In the square, someone murmured. Their words were shocking. And that young man is absolutely terrifying. He will attract more attention than the Bawang sect. The super experts in the Alliance will probably notice him. Someone else said. Looking at the figure of the young man on the ring, their eyes were filled with shock. However, until now, they still did not know the name of the young man. This is definitely a dark horse. With his own strength, he shone in the preliminaries of the Alliance Conference. I really want to know how far he can go when he competes with the younger generation of the top 10 forces in the Alliance Conference. Many people were looking forward to it. They wanted to see the young man from the Bawang sect get a spot and compete with the disciples of the top 10 forces in the end. Until now, everyone believed that he had the ability to do so. In the Alliance Conference, it was not unheard of for 20 disciples of a force to be completely wiped out. It was also not unimaginable. However, it was too shocking for 20 people to be completely wiped out by one person. The young man fought against 20 disciples of the Gimdeo sect and the 7-Star Sword School on the ring. His robe was not even stained with a trace of blood. It had to be said that the young man was too strong. He was far beyond everyone's imagination. Among the crowd, Chen Chuan, the Xianjian sect, and the Liuhe sect were all looking at the young man on the ring in shock. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Only the people of the Bawang sect, the Merciless West, the Green Emperor, the Yin-Yang Emperor of the Dead, the Devouring Spirit Emperor, and Huang Jian were expressionless. The Alliance Conference continues. At this moment, the middle-aged man who hosted the Alliance Conference regained his senses. He could not help but say this loudly. After he finished speaking, the young man on the ring. As for himself, he found a clean piece of ground and gently sat down cross-legged, slowly adjusting his breathing. Su-Yi didn't have the slightest bit of pity towards the members of the Golden Saber sect and 7-Star Sword sect. Su-Yi never took the initiative to provoke others. However, when others offended him, Su-Yi would not be soft-hearted. Soon, another member of the Alliance walked to the side of the 10th arena and adjusted the timer. Everyone in the square was watching this scene. They really wanted to know if there would be anyone who would dare to challenge the youth in the next 2 hours. Su-Yi closed his eyes and adjusted his breath. He did not pay attention to the situation in the other 9 rings. Those battles were not attractive to him at all. Under such circumstances, time passed by slowly. Finally, 2 hours had passed without anyone noticing. During this period of time, the battles on the 1st to 9th rings had changed a few times. However, there was still no movement on the 10th ring. The Bawang sect has advanced directly. No one dares to compete with him for this spot. Many people below the ring could not calm down. They were shocked by the young man who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. In just 2 battles, the young man had established an image in everyone's mind that was difficult to defeat. None of the major forces were willing to gnaw on such a tough bone. This is a genius. His cultivation is profound and his methods are terrifying. In the preliminaries of the Alliance, he has a crushing position. Out of the 10 rings, 1 of them should belong to him. His opponent will be in the real Alliance Conference. Someone murmured and said with a flickering gaze. For absolute geniuses, it was common for them to kill people of a higher level. That young man's cultivation was even more powerful. Therefore, he was bound to crush the disciples of the major forces who participated in the preliminaries. He was not on the same level as these people. That young man could completely surpass the limit of a major realm and challenge an ordinary origin void realm expert. Perhaps, only the disciples of the 3 major first-rate forces and the 7 major second-rate forces could suppress him. The 10th ring, 2 hours have passed. No one has challenged it. The Bawang sect has advanced automatically. Finally, the middle-aged Origin Emperor who presided over the Alliance Conference announced the result. The entire place was silent. No one was discussing anything. Unknowingly, they all felt that this result was expected. Hearing this announcement, Sui also opened his eyes slightly, but there was not much expression on his face. Subsequently, he continued to close his eyes and rest, and the Alliance Conference continued. More than half a day had passed. As the fighting and defending of the rings continued, the various major forces had already carried out over 100 battles. The 1st to 9th rings all changed owners repeatedly. There was not a single force that kept defending until the end. Many of the truly powerful forces were still waiting. They waited until the crucial moment to make their move. It's about time. Many forces have used up their chance and their overall strength has been revealed. Those powerful forces should make their move. It's indeed time for them to make their move. Just when there were less than 2 hours left before the first day of the tournament, someone in the square said with a burning gaze, "The 20 from the Crimson Thunder Hall have all passed. Please choose the ring you wish to challenge. The 20 from the Zephyr sect have all passed. Please choose the ring you wish to challenge. The 20 from the Sunblaze sect have all passed. Please choose the ring you wish to challenge. The 20 from the Celestial Spider sect have all passed. Please choose the ring you wish to challenge." Such voices rang out again and again, all from the burly man in charge of the examination. As the light from the examination stone lit up, one figure after another ascended the stage. Sui, who was resting with his eyes closed, slowly opened his eyes and looked at the crowd that had just ascended the stage. The Sunblaze sect. He heard a familiar name. It was the sect that had teamed up with Chen Chuan. However, when Sui raised his head and looked over, he discovered that there was no trace of Chen Chu among the crowd from the Sunblaze sect. Aren't they teaming up? Why isn't he on the stage? Sui was surprised and bewildered. Just like the situation between Chen Chu and the Sunblaze sect, many forces existed. The Sunblaze sect wanted to borrow Chen Chu's powerful strength, while Chen Chu hoped to join forces with a sufficiently powerful force. Naturally, they would have more confidence in competing. Both sides took what they needed, and it was equivalent to an extremely reasonable deal. Could it be that something has happened? Sui was puzzled. He no longer looked at the stage, but cast his gaze into the endless crowd below, intending to find the familiar figure of the young man. This matter made him feel a little strange. Logically speaking, the agreement between the two parties should not be like this, unless there was some unforeseen event. Not long after, Sui saw Chen Chu in the crowd. At this moment, he was looking at a ring with a face of indignation. The people from the Sunblaze sect were fighting with another sect on the stage. Beside Chen Chuan, there were 2 other people who had similar expressions. Indeed, there's a problem. Sui raised his eyebrows, instantly understanding this point. There was no need to think too much. There must be some conflict between Chen Chuan and the Sunblaze sect, resulting in the current situation. Chen Chuan had said that he had 2 friends like him who had teamed up with the Sunblaze sect. Now, it seemed like it was the 2 people beside him? However, Sui did not care about this matter. He could not care less about it now. He had already obtained a spot and only needed to wait for the end of the arena competition to enter the next round of the assembly. This time, The Bawang sect should be enough to attract a lot of attention, right? Su-yi withdrew his thoughts. When he thought of this problem, he could not help but smile. This was the effect he wanted. From today onwards, everyone who came to 9-Star City would know the name of the Bawang sect. As time passed, the news would spread and the entire Chaos Territory would know. This was extremely beneficial for the expansion of the Bawang sect. Sacred Mountain, Wang Chuanda, just you wait. I, Su-yi, will eventually trample on your sect and wash away the humiliation I have suffered. And that day is not too far away. Su-yi clenched his fists and narrowed his eyes, emitting a biting cold aura. His enemies were too strong. He had to quickly rise to compete with Sacred Mountain. It had been a few months since Su-yi came to the Chaos Domain. Not long after the Alliance Conference, the Sacred Mountain would also receive the news. At that time, the other party would probably make a new move. The Sunblaze sect is quite strong. In the following time, Su-yi also paid attention to the competition in the arena. One of the groups was the Sunblaze sect. From Su-yi's observation, the Sunblaze sect had a young man in his 30s who was extremely strong. He was close to the 8th level of Yuanzhen realm. He was definitely very strong. The other 19 people's overall strength was not weak either. In the fierce attacks, their opponents were unable to withstand and were on the verge of defeat. So it's a rogue cultivator. From Su-yi's observation, the strongest person in the Sunblaze sect was dressed differently from most people. There was no doubt that he was a rogue cultivator. In addition to this person, there were 2 other rogue cultivators whose strength could not be underestimated. They were both at the 6th level of Yuanzhen realm. Su-yi felt a little strange about this. Chapter 1040. Indeed, not long after, the 20 disciples from Sunblaze sect charged forward and swept their opponents out of the arena. The strongest rogue cultivator unleashed his full strength. Terrifying energy surged around his body and swirled around him. Whenever his opponents got close to him, they would be hit by his fist and sent flying. After a few rounds, the entire arena was cleared. Only the Sunblaze sect disciples were left on the arena. Even though this battle was not easy, their overall strength was still intact. No one was injured and they could continue to defend the arena. Su-yi watched for a while and did not continue to pay attention to them. This was because another familiar sect was about to enter the arena. Is Xianjian's sect finally going to enter the arena? Under Su-yi's gaze, 20 people from Xianjian's sect walked out and headed towards the testing stone. These people were led by a young man. His cultivation was not ordinary. He was at level 8 Yuanzhen realm and was strong enough. Ji Hanua was also one of the 20 people. There were also some rogue cultivators in Xianjian's sect. Su-yi counted and there were 4 of them. In other words, Ji Tianfu had given out 4 slots to 4 rogue cultivators. These rogue cultivators are quite strong. Under Su-yi's probing, he quickly grasped the strength of the 4 rogue cultivators. Among the 4, one of them had just reached level 7 Yuanzhen realm. 2 of them were at level 6 Yuanzhen realm and the 4th was at level 5 Yuanzhen realm. Such strength was not ordinary. Even if these rogue cultivators were placed in a third-rate force, they would definitely be ranked in the top few. Lin Fan had no idea where Xianjian's sect found these rogue cultivators from. With their addition, the overall strength of Xianjian's sect had increased by a large margin. One should know that there was a huge disparity in the cultivation of the 20 people. More than half of them were below level 5 Yuanzhen realm. This was the normal ratio of the top sections. Let's begin the testing. The middle-aged man in charge of the testing glanced at the 20 people from Xianjian's sect and said calmly. The young man in the lead stepped forward and handed the token to the man. Under his lead, the rest of the people came to the testing stone and placed their palms on it. A green light shone out. Come on, everyone. We are about to enter the arena. After Ji Hanua passed the test, he retracted his hand. She turned her head in surprise and said to the 4 rogue cultivators beside her. Because at this time, the 4 rogue cultivators did not go forward to check. Instead, they all had their hands behind their backs as if this matter had nothing to do with them. That's right, it's time for us to go on stage. Let's hurry up and get tested. The leader of the group from Xianjian sect said to the 4 of them. However, their words caused the 4 rogue cultivators to laugh strangely. What happened? Sweeping his gaze across the faces of the 4 people, the young man in the lead seemed to have felt that something was wrong. He immediately frowned and asked in a deep voice. The 4 rogue cultivators had strange expressions on their faces, as if they had gone mad. They were sneering to themselves. Hurry up and go on stage. Don't dawdle here. The burly man in charge of the test was also getting impatient as he shouted at the 4 of them. Master, we are not here to represent Xianjian faction. Suddenly, a rogue cultivator walked out and cupped his fists at the burly man. The other 3 nodded in agreement. As soon as this was said, everyone from Xianjian faction was shocked. Ma Guangfeng, what did you say? The leader of the group immediately rushed forward and stared at the 4 rogue cultivators in disbelief. Yuan Xuan, you didn't hear wrongly. We are not here to represent Xianjian faction. The rogue cultivator named Ma Guangfeng smiled faintly and said to the leader of Xianjian faction. Ma Guangfeng, Jie Shiyang, Qi Tsongguang, Dong Qingzhou, what is the meaning of this? Ji Hanua's pretty face turned ugly as she shouted at the 4 of them angrily. Facing such a question, the 4 rogue cultivators placed their hands behind their backs and sneered at Ji Hanua. Other than the disdain in their eyes, there was also a hint of wretchedness. What is going on? Soon, Ji Tianfu also realized that something was wrong. He came closer and asked the crowd. Subconsciously, he also realized that there might be a major change in the situation. Therefore, Ji Tianfu's aura was released and locked onto the 4 rogue cultivators. Sect leader Ji, what is the meaning of this? We are not willing to fight for Xianjian faction. Are you going to force us? Ma Guangfeng looked at Ji Tianfu. Under the powerful aura, his face was covered in cold sweat. However, he still spoke with a stern expression as if he was not afraid of this origin emperor. We said that we would work together. Why are you going back on your words? Ji Tianfu's eyes swept across the 4 of them, causing them to be shocked. The 4 rogue cultivators' faces were almost purple. However, they were still stubborn and had no intention of giving in. Ji Tianfu, aren't you going overboard? These people are close to my Green Sanctuary sect. If you want to bully them, have you asked my Green Sanctuary sect's permission? At this moment, a cold snort was heard from behind Ji Tianfu. He turned around and saw a group of people walking towards him. The leader of the group was a middle-aged man in his 50s. He had a mustache on his lips and one side of his mouth was curled up. He was looking at Ji Tianfu with a cold smile. Beside the middle-aged man was a young man in his late 20s. His eyes were wide open and he looked at everyone as if he was looking at a joke. He was indescribably arrogant. Behind the 2 of them were a few middle-aged experts. Most of them were from the younger generation. Jiang Zikan, so it's your Green Sanctuary sect's doing. Ji Tianfu pointed at the middle-aged man and said angrily. At this point, how could he still not understand that he had been set up by someone else? In the preliminary selection of the alliance meet, each force would have 20 spots. Xianjian faction had recruited 4 powerful rogue cultivators, and they had thought that they had a high chance of getting a spot. Who would have thought that the other party would go back on their words just before they went up on the stage? As such, Ji Tianfu was in a difficult position. If he went up on the stage, he would not be able to compete with the others without 4 experts. Even if he won once or twice, he would not be able to last till the end. However, if he did not go up on the stage, this opportunity would be wasted. If that was all, it would be fine. However, The thing that frustrated Ji Tianfu the most was that where was he going to find 4 suitable candidates to replace them? Are you guys from Xianjian faction going up on the stage or not? If you guys don't go up on the stage, it will be taken as a forfeit. Suddenly, the middle-aged man who was in charge of the assessment said. His voice was buzzing with dissatisfaction. Good. Very good. Ji Tianfu's face was extremely gloomy. He stared at Jiang Zikan from the Green Sanctuary sect and Ma Guangfeng and the other rogue cultivators. We don't want to compete anymore. Let's go. In the end, Ji Tianfu waved his hand decisively and said to all the disciples of Xianjian faction. Faction leader. Father. The young man from Xianjian faction, Ji Hanhua, and the rest of the disciples stepped forward and looked at Ji Tianfu. Let's go. Ji Tianfu shouted again. His attitude did not allow anyone to question him. All the disciples kept quiet and did not dare to question him anymore. He, looking at the disciples of Xianjian faction walking back into the crowd, Jiang Zikan from the Green Sanctuary sect, the young man beside him, and the 4 rogue cultivators laughed coldly again. Ji Tianfu, at least you know what's good for you. If not, I will make sure that none of your disciples will be able to walk out of the arena alive. Jiang Zikan's mustache curled up. His eyes were shining and his words were cold. Jiang Su, go with them for the assessment. It's time for us to make our move. Jiang Zikan turned around and said to the arrogant young man beside him. He then raised his head and gestured for him to go up on the stage. The arrogant young man nodded his head. He then led the disciples of Green Sanctuary sect to the assessment stone and started the assessment. The 4 rogue cultivators who were called Ma Guangfeng, Jie Shiyang, Qi Rinxian and Dong Qingzhou also joined the disciples of Green Sanctuary sect. They made up a total of 20 people and passed the assessment. Immediately, they went up on the stage and chose a champion to challenge. Father, when did the Green Sanctuary sect make their move? Ji Hanhua, who was in the crowd, frowned and asked the tall man beside her. I'm afraid they have planned this from the start. They purposely let the 4 of them come in contact with Xianjian sect. At the last moment, they betrayed us so that we would lose the right to compete. Ji Tianfu's face was still ghastly. He said flatly, This time I have made a mistake. I can't believe that the Green Sanctuary sect set me up. He clenched his fist and punched the air. He was extremely angry. The alliance meeting was held once every 50 years. Before they could even go up on the stage to challenge, they had already lost the right to participate. This was a huge blow to their morale. Most importantly, the day's competition was coming to an end. In just one night, where could he find the 4 suitable people to fill the gap? Green Sanctuary sect, we will remember this. The young man beside Ji Tianfu, who was called Yuan Xuan, gritted his teeth and said, The Green Sanctuary sect and Xianjian sect had always been enemies. A few months ago, the Green Sanctuary sect had instructed the Sea Dragon Gang to kidnap Ji Hanhua to threaten Ji Tianfu. However, when the plan was about to succeed, it was ruined by Su Yi. After that, Ji Tianfu had tried to take revenge on the Green Sanctuary sect. However, as the alliance meeting was approaching, he did not make any big moves. The overall strength of the 2 forces was not too different. Therefore, Ji Tianfu was a little worried. If he were to attack recklessly, there might be some unexpected consequences. What he did not expect was that the Green Sanctuary sect would set up a trap during the alliance meeting. This was something that no one in Xianjian sect had expected. It's our fault that Xianjian sect is not strong enough. If not, we would not have suffered such a loss. Ji Tianfu mumbled to himself with a ghastly expression. He shifted his gaze and looked at the 10th arena. He saw the young man sitting on it with his legs crossed. If he agrees to join forces with Xianjian sect. Chapter 1041. If it was before, Ji Tianfu would have thought that such a thought was not so far-fetched. Although Su Yi was strong, Xianjian's sect was not weak either. If they were to work together, they could only be considered as a strong team. However, things were different now. Su Yi's youth had completely subverted Ji Tianfu's imagination. With his own strength, he was able to obtain the right to participate in the competition, and no one dared to challenge him. Compared to him, the young disciples of Xianjian's sect were instantly overshadowed. At this stage, if the two parties were to work together again, Xianjian's sect would have to rely on Su Yi. Father, don't think too much. We still have one more chance to challenge him. Looking at his father's gloomy face, Ji Hanhua did not ask any more questions. Instead, she comforted him. We will fight again tomorrow. Despite his reluctance, Ji Tianfu still said so. There was still one more night for him to work. Perhaps he could get to know some decent rogue cultivators to fill the gap between the four of them. However, if there were no suitable candidates, he could only brace himself and let the other disciples join in. Let's go. After taking one last look at the Green Sanctuary sect that was fighting fiercely in the arena, Ji Tianfu waved his hand and led all the disciples away from the square. Soon, they disappeared. It seems like even though private fights are not allowed in Nine-Star City, there are still all kinds of ways to fight. Su Yi had seen everything that happened between Xianjian sect and Green Sanctuary sect. First, there were some unforeseen events that happened between Chen Chu and Sun Blaze sect. This had already caught Su Yi's attention. Now, Xianjian sect was also made a fool of. One could see that the competition had just ended and the undercurrent was surging fiercely. Among the many forces that Su Yi did not know, similar situations would not be rare. May I ask if I can walk down from the arena? Su Yi suddenly looked down from the arena and asked the middle-aged Origin Emperor that was hosting the competition. After the previous two battles, Su Yi did not expend much of his energy. After he had adjusted his breathing, he had adjusted his body's condition to the absolute peak. Since he had already obtained one of the final spots, it seemed like there was no need for him to continue staying on the arena. The Bawang sect has already obtained a spot, so this arena belongs to you. Therefore, you don't have to stay on it. The middle-aged man thought for a moment before he nodded and said. A similar situation had never occurred in the past Alliance conferences. How could anyone win a spot on the first day? Most of the time, the outcome would only be decided on the second day. That's great. Su Yi smiled and then flew down into the crowd in the middle of the square. What a young man! He's really extraordinary. If he's a little older, he won't need to be much older. He'll only need to be 3 to 5 years old, and he'll probably be able to compete with the strongest people in the first-rate forces. That's for sure. This young man is simply a monster. Su Yi's figure fell into the eyes of many onlookers, causing them to exclaim in surprise once again. At this moment, everyone had already regarded him as one of the strongest people in a first-rate force. It was a pity that this young man was still young. If he were a few years older, he would only be in his early 20s. He would definitely be able to compete with the best people in their 30s. Sect leader, shall we go back to the inn? Su Yi, Merciless West, Green Emperor, Yin Yang Ghost Emperor, Devouring Spirit Emperor, and Huang Jian gathered together. Huang Jian immediately asked him. There's nothing to see here. Let's go back. We'll come back tomorrow. Su Yi nodded and said softly. After he finished speaking, he led them through the crowd and walked in a certain direction. Everyone was shocked by this young man's dazzling performance on the arena. As he walked, the crowd directly parted to make a path for him. At the other end of the path was Chen Chu and 2 other rogue cultivators. Brother Su Yi. Seeing Su Yi walking towards him, Chen Chu immediately smiled and was very happy. Although he could not go on the arena with the Sunblaze sect, Chen Chu was still happy for Su Yi. Chen Chu and was able to obtain the qualification for the competition quickly. In addition to his amazing strength, Chen Chu felt that it was a great achievement to be able to call Su-yi brother. "Brother Chen, what's the matter with you?" Su-yi did not dawdle. He directly motioned to the people from the Sunblaze sect who were guarding the arena and asked Chen Chuan. Hearing this, Chen Chuan's originally happy expression was overshadowed by gloom. His face was livid, but he did not immediately answer Su-yi. Seeing this, Su-yi did not delve into it. He immediately asked again, "Brother Chen, do you have anything else to do here? Why don't you come with me?" "Okay." This time, Chen Chu nodded his head and agreed without hesitation. He and Su-yi had been traveling together for a long time. They were already very familiar with each other. There was no pretense at all. As for the Green Emperor, Yin-Yang Ghost Emperor, Devouring Spirit Emperor, and Huang Jian, Chen Chu also knew them. However, he looked more at Merciless West, because Chen Chu had not seen this old man along the way. Chen Chu actually knows this young man from the Bawang sect. Looking at Chen Chuan, who was walking side by side with Su-yi, his two friends were stunned. They rubbed their eyes and could not believe it. Chen Chuan was just a rogue cultivator. He did not have a strong background. How could he know such a person? "Shen Hong, Yi Haokong, what are you two doing? Why don't you go?" In an instant, Chen Chuan, who had already walked a distance, stopped. He turned around and shouted at his two friends who were still in a daze. The two rogue cultivators were stunned and did not know what to say. Let's go with Chen Chuan." One of the rogue cultivators reacted quickly. He pulled up his companion and quickly caught up with Chen Chuan. The other person stood beside Su-yi, feeling a little uneasy. Inside his heart, he could not help but feel that something was amiss. The group of people walked quickly. Before long, they left the square and disappeared. "Have you found out the background of that young man?" In the stands near the arena, one of the experts of the Alliance asked the person next to him. "Not yet. It's just some recent activities. He does have a deep grudge with the Gimdeo sect and the Seven-Star Sword School, which is why the two sects did not hesitate to kill him." An expert spoke, stating this result. "This young man seems to have appeared out of thin air. Before he became enemies with the Gimdeo sect, there seemed to be no trace of him in the Chaos region." Another person added, "Such a young man can't be a nobody. Since he has just emerged in the Chaos region, it is most likely that he came from the 6 continents, the 3 continents, and the 1 sea. These places are more powerful than the Chaos region. It's understandable that there is a talented young man. But we must figure out his background. If he is sent by the top 10 forces and has other intentions in the Chaos region, we still have to be careful." An old man took over the conversation and said word by word. Almost a day had passed and they had only found out so little, which made them feel a little helpless. According to what they knew now, they only knew that the young man was from the Bawang sect. They did not even know his real name. Perhaps this Bawang sect was still a non-existent thing. It was really difficult to find out. Don't worry, his identity won't be hidden for long. Since he dares to be so high-profile, the possibility of him being a spy from the 6 continents, the 3 continents, and the 1 sea is almost zero. Another expert said. After he finished speaking, he suddenly frowned, as if he was trying hard to recall something. He said strangely, "But I keep feeling that I have heard the name Bawang sect somewhere before, but I can't remember it. It's really strange." "You might have remembered it wrongly, right?" Someone next to him raised his eyebrows and said lightly. They did not delve too deeply into this question and continued to watch the battles in the arena. In this Alliance Conference's preliminary selection, they wanted to select some extraordinary disciples from the outstanding young people so that they could receive better training and increase the strength of each force. Of course, within the top 10 forces, they had their own selection rules regarding the candidates that they could select. Other than that, the most important thing was that those outstanding youths would be able to survive after the end of the arena competition. The arena battles continued and the various forces fought. After a day, almost all the forces that were supposed to fight had already done so. Except for the 10th arena that Su-Yi had already occupied, the remaining 9 arenas had changed owners more than once. Today's competition was about to come to an end. As the sky became darker and darker, no one was prepared to go up to challenge. When the sky was about to turn dark, several figures gathered in the main hall of a mansion in the northern part of 9-Star City, and they sat separately. This mansion was not considered luxurious in 9-Star City, but it was imposing enough to show a certain level of identity and status. At this time, the main hall was already filled with flickering lights, emitting a clear light. In the main seat of the main hall, a middle-aged man was sitting. His face was pale, and his body was surging with hostility. Although he was trying hard to restrain himself, his behavior still made an old man in his 60s frown. "Elder Wu, you must help me. My Gimdeo sect has suffered a great loss this time, and I can't take this lying down no matter what." The middle-aged man sitting below was the sect leader of the Gimdeo sect, Yang Baikuan. He was like an aggrieved child, full of sadness and annoyance in front of the old man. His only son had died tragically, and his 10 strongest disciples were quickly killed. Such a great hatred was unbearable for him. What was more, the Gimdeo sect had completely lost the opportunity to participate in this alliance conference. "Don't be so anxious," the old man in the main seat said slowly to Yang Baikuan. "He's only a 17-year-old boy, but he made you, the sect leader, so impatient. This won't do." Chapter 1042. Your father once saved the life of the young sect master. In addition, the Gimdeo sect is also considered a branch of the Tiangang sect. Naturally, I will help you with this matter. Elder Wu looked at Yang Baikuan and said slowly, "However, don't be too anxious about this matter. Didn't you say that the boy from the Bawang sect had already obtained a spot in the grand meeting? As long as he continues to participate in the grand meeting, won't we still have a good chance of killing him?" Elder Wu did not care about the boy who had killed the Bawang sect at all. He did not think that the boy was a very powerful young cultivator at all. "However, I don't want to see that little bastard alive for even a day. Every moment he jumps around, my heart can't be at peace." Yang Baikuan was extremely furious as he said this. His hatred for Su-Yi had reached an extreme point. Naturally, it was difficult for outsiders to understand. When Elder Wu saw this, a look of disgust flashed across his eyes. He scoffed softly and said, "He has already obtained a spot. It's no longer possible to kill him in the arena. Furthermore, this is 9-Star City. If you don't want to die, restrain yourself a little. Otherwise, if the 3 great forces attack in anger, don't drag me and the Tiangang sect into it." These words were harsh enough, but Yang Baikuan was still unwilling to give up. He quickly said, "But, no buts." Elder Wu cut him off and chided, "Go back and calm down first. Don't let your hatred get to your head. I've promised to avenge you, so I won't go back on my word. Isn't he just a little bastard? As long as he dares to step into the secret place, I'll make sure that he won't be able to walk out alive." As he spoke, Elder Wu's entire body emitted a strong murderous aura. "Yes, Elder Wu. I'll take my leave first." Under Elder Wu's reprimand, Yang Baikuan finally stopped his insolence. He suppressed the restlessness in his heart and walked out of the grand hall. He walked through the corridors and stairs. When Yang Baikuan was about to walk out of the mansion, Ran Jianxian, who had been waiting here, quickly went up to him. "How is it?" Ran Jianxian asked Yang Baikuan impatiently. Their 2 great sects could be said to be in the same boat. Yang Baikuan and Ran Jianxian both suffered the pain of losing their children. It was also because of this that the two of them had come together and were bent on killing that young man. Ran Jianxian had always known that the Gimdeo sect's strongest person, Yang Yi, who was also Yang Baikuan's father, seemed to have an unusual relationship with him. However, no one knew the details. Only until today did he find out that behind Yang Yi, there was actually the existence of a second-rate power like the Heavenly Dipper sect. It was no wonder that the Golden Saber sect was able to rise up in such a short time. The Heavenly Dipper sect must have provided a lot of support. It was because of this relationship that Yang Baikuan wanted to use it to kill the young man from the Overlord sect. Elder Wu has already agreed. However, we can't fight him in the arena. We can only let the young experts of the Big Dipper sect deal with him in the secret place. Yang Baikuan said to Ran Jianxian softly with an unsightly expression. 1. As long as I can kill that boy, no matter what the Tiangang sect wants, I won't hesitate as long as I can do it. Ran Jianxian gritted his teeth and said bitterly. If the boy from the Bawang sect didn't die, he would always be Ran Jianxuan's sore point and would never be healed. We'll talk about this later. You can't reveal the relationship between the Gimdeo sect and the Tiangang sect. Yang Baikuan turned his head and glanced in the direction of the Great Hall just now as he said. After that, the two of them didn't stay any longer and left the mansion. With the promise of the Tiangang sect's Elder Wu, the two of them knew what to do. Although Yang Baikuan couldn't wait to kill the boy immediately, he wasn't impulsive. He gritted his teeth and restrained himself. In the room of the inn, Su Yi, Merciless West, and Green Emperor were all there. Chen Chuan and his two rogue cultivator friends were also there. After Chen Chuan's introduction, everyone knew that the two of them were called Shen Hong and Yi Haokong. Shen Hong was tall and strong with a powerful aura. His cultivation was at the peak of the 6th level of Yuan Zhen realm, slightly stronger than Chen Chuan. Yi Haokong was of medium build, not as delicate as Chen Chuan. His eyes were bright and full of spirit, with a sense of shrewdness. His cultivation was slightly lower than Chen Chuan's, so it was hard to say how strong he was. Hello, Brother Su. Shen Hong and Yi Haokong followed Chen Chu unto the place where Su Yi was staying. They still couldn't believe it. They didn't dare to call Su Yi's name like Chen Chuan, because the boy's strength far exceeded theirs. It's a little crowded here. Let's make do. Su Yi greeted them and found himself a stool to sit down. Then, he asked Chen Chuan, "Are you guys in some kind of trouble?" When he saw the faces of Chen Chuan and the others, he roughly guessed the situation, but he couldn't be sure. They might have been suddenly abandoned by the Sunblaze sect. To tell you the truth, Brother Su Yi, I don't blame the Sunblaze sect for going back on their word. I just hate that I'm not strong enough, weaker than Tang Tianxing, Shi Rongchang, and Du Zhao. Chen Chuan laughed bitterly and shook his head. Shen Hong and Yi Haokong unconsciously clenched their fists when they heard this, but the three of them didn't have the same indignation as they did earlier. In fact, only Tang Tianxing is stronger than the three of us. He's already at the peak of the 7th level of Yuan Zhen realm and is about to reach the 8th level. Shi Rongchang and Du Zhao are slightly weaker than us. However, the Sunblaze sect has taken a fancy to Tang Tianxing. They originally wanted to take the spots of their weaker disciples to recruit Tang Tianxing. However, Tang Tianxing has some grudges with the three of us. Therefore, he requested that the three of us must withdraw at the same time before he is willing to cooperate with the Sunblaze sect. Shen Hong opened his mouth and explained. Su Yi nodded slightly when he heard this. He could roughly guess the situation. Now that he heard it from these people, everything was clear. It seemed that the strongest rogue cultivator in the Sunblaze sect was the Tang Tianxing that Shen Hong had mentioned. The young rogue cultivator was indeed strong. In terms of talent, he was not inferior to young Master Wang from the Green Sanctuary sect who had died at the hands of Su Yi. Moreover, Tang Tianxing was stronger than young Master Wang in terms of age. However, Sui didn't care about such strength at all. If that's the case, why don't I recommend you to the Xianjian sect? What do you think? Sui thought for a while and felt that this was really a coincidence. The Xianjian sect was set up by the Green Sanctuary sect and 4 rogue cultivators, while Chen Chuan was set up by the other rogue cultivators and was abandoned by the Sunblaze sect. In this case, wouldn't the two of them hit it off? Brother Sui, do you know anyone from the Xianjian sect? That's great. Chen Chuan was overjoyed and said. They had seen what had happened to the Xianjian sect. However, Chen Chuan and the rest were still angry and didn't think of looking for the Xianjian sect. Later on, Ji Tianfu left with his disciples and they lost track of them. How could they find them in such a big 9-star city? Now, with Su Yi's words, things were even more different. If he was familiar with the Xianjian sect, the two sides would trust each other more. This was indeed a good idea. Brother Su, if you can help us, we'll be very grateful. Shun Hong and Yi Haokong quickly thanked Su Yi and they were even more respectful of him. The Alliance Conference was a grand occasion for the young geniuses. Everyone wanted to make it to the end. Later on, they had lost the opportunity to compete and they couldn't help but feel depressed. However, now that the opportunity had appeared in front of them again, how could they not be surprised? This is not a big deal. Moreover, I think sect leader Ji will do me this favor. Sui waved his hand and didn't make full promises. Then, he said to the 3 of them, however, I also have something to talk to you about. Brother Sui, what is it? Just say it. Chen Chuan was slightly surprised. After such a long time of contact, Sui rarely spoke to him in such a formal manner. However, he also knew that since Sui said that he wanted to talk, he would definitely not cheat them. If the 3 of you are interested, as the sect leader of the Bawang sect, I would like to invite you to join the Bawang sect. Perhaps the 3 of you still have doubts about the 3 words Overlord sect, but I can't say much about it. I can only promise the 3 of you one thing, and that is, if the 3 of you agree, I can give you great benefits. Sui looked at the 3 of them and said. This, Chen Chuan, Shun Hong, and Yi Haokong looked at each other and found it difficult to make a decision for a while. They were all rogue cultivators with extraordinary talent. If they were willing, a large number of third-rate forces, or even second-rate forces, would fight over them. However, they didn't choose to do so. There must be their own reasons for this. Now Sui suddenly invited them, which really made the 3 of them feel embarrassed. You don't have to answer me in a hurry. It doesn't matter if you refuse. I, Sui, can make friends with you. Sui smiled faintly and said casually. What he valued was the potential of these people. Besides, the Bawang sect was really short of people now. He had some understanding of Chen Chuan along the way. He knew that this young man had a good character and could be trusted. He thought that Shun Hong and Yi Haokong were similar. Hence, Sui did have the intention to appease them. However, Sui would not force them to do so. Everyone had their own ambitions. Perhaps they had some hidden troubles that they could not talk about. Brother Sui, please let us think about it. In addition, even if we can't join the Bawang sect, we will definitely tell you the reason. Chen Chuan thought about it and said seriously. Chapter 1043. For Chen Chuan, Shun Hong, and Yi Haokong, they were individual cultivators. If they wanted to join a sect, they could have done so a long time ago. However, that was not the case. Generally, rogue cultivators were extremely poor. However, to some extent, being a rogue cultivator also had its benefits. Otherwise, an Origin Emperor realm expert like Merciless West, who was also a soul controller, would be treated as a distinguished guest no matter which sect she joined. Okay, you can tell me the result at any time. Sui nodded. He did not intend to force the 3 of them to do anything. However, he was looking forward to them joining his sect. With his mysterious space and the spiritual liquid treasure, the three of them would definitely be able to reach a higher realm in a short time. Thank you, Brother Sui, Chen Chuan replied. However, he had a strange feeling in his heart. It was not until now that they knew that Sui was the leader of the Bawang sect. However, according to the rumors in the square today, it seemed that there were still several powerful Emperor Realm experts in the Bawang sect. Otherwise, how could they create such a huge commotion between the 7-Star Sword School and the Gimdeo sect? Is handsome Su not back yet? Sui nodded and turned to look at the door. He should be back soon. However, 9 stars is quite big. It will take some time to find the people from the Xianjian sect and return here, Merciless West replied. Previously, when the people from the Xianjian sect left in anger, Sui, who was in the arena, signaled Merciless West to follow him. Handsome Su, who was sleeping soundly, was immediately energized when he heard that there was something to do. He ignored Merciless West and flew away on his own. Looking at the time, it was about time for him to return. Just as everyone was thinking about this, the door was pushed open and a bird flew in. It was Handsome Su. Boss! Handsome Su landed on Su Yi's shoulder. CB knew XO fastest S up, 0 MIAs. Soon as he opened his mouth to speak, Shen Hong and Yi Haokong in the room were directly frightened. Demon void stage? The two itinerant cultivators were shocked. Such an ordinary-looking bird was actually a demon void realm cultivator? Handsome Su only glanced at them indifferently and ignored them. At this moment, several figures followed him in from outside the door. The person in the lead was tall and well-built with an elegant aura. He was the master of Xianjian faction, Ji Tianfu. Behind him, Ji Hanhuo and Yu Wenshuan walked in together. Little brother Sui. Sui. Ji Tianfu and Ji Hanhuo smiled at Sui. I was just about to look for you, but I didn't expect Sect Master Ji to come here directly. Sui returned the greeting with a smile. This indeed surprised him. Haha, I don't have anything else to do. I'm just here to congratulate little brother Sui for successfully obtaining the right to participate in the competition. Ji Tianfu said sincerely, but there was a complicated look in his eyes. Ji Hanhuo, who was behind him, was the same. While she was happy for Sui, she was still angry about the situation that her faction encountered. Thank you, Sect Master Ji and Miss Hanu. Sui nodded at the young man behind Ji Tianfu as a form of greeting. Then, Sui did not beat around the bush and directly introduced Chen Chu, Shen Hong, and Yi Haokong to Ji Tianfu. This was Suyi's main purpose. If it were any other day, he might not care about these things. But today, Xianjian faction was set up by Qingming faction, and Chen Chu and the other two were also set up by others. Sui was familiar with both parties and had a good relationship with them. Therefore, he was happy to be the middleman and build bridges for them. Soon, Ji Tianfu, Chen Chu, and the other two had a pleasant conversation. In a short while, they had finalized the decision to cooperate with each other. Tomorrow, Xianjian faction had another chance to compete on the stage. With Chen Chu and the other two joining, their overall strength had greatly increased. Ji Tianfu, Chen Chu, and the rest expressed their gratitude to Sui. Then, both parties did not stay any longer and left. The moment before she walked out of the door, Ji Hanhuo turned around and looked at Sui deeply. Sui, however, grinned and smiled at her gently. This made Ji Hanhuo lower her head slightly. Then, she stepped out of the door and disappeared. It seems that this little girl is interested in you. Seeing that the group of people had disappeared, Merciless West, who had seen everything, said with a smile. He glanced at Sui, who was beside him, and saw that this kid looked embarrassed. Of course not. Sui rolled his eyes at Merciless West and walked back into the house. Ji Hanhuo had helped him several times. The first time was when he killed the 4 protectors of the Gimdeo sect. She saw it with her own eyes, but she hid it. The second time was when the Gimdeo sect and the Seven-Star Sword School were chasing Su Yi. It was Ji Tianfu who suddenly appeared and took Su Yi away, which made it easier for him to escape. According to Ji Tianfu, it was Ji Hanhua who begged Ji Tianfu to do this. It could be seen that the girl had deep feelings for Su Yi. In fact, he didn't have any bad feelings for Ji Hanhua, but it was a bit too fake to talk about how much he liked her. This kind of thing was better to let nature take its course. Everything depended on fate. Su Yi suddenly remembered that when Su Yi applied medicine to heal the girl in the cave on the island, the charming scene flashed in his mind. Su Yi, a true virgin who had lived 2 lives, couldn't help but feel restless. Beast. Su Yi secretly scolded himself for being shameless. He was such a great and upright person. How could he think about this kind of thing? He was simply too shameless. Kid, did you experience something that I don't know about? Seeing Su Yi's expression change, Merciless West teased from the side. Not only Merciless West, but Su Xiaoshui, the Green Emperor, the Yin-Yang Emperor of the Underworld, Huang Jian, and the Devouring Spirit Emperor were also laughing. Each of them looked at Su Yi with an unfathomable gaze, as if they had seen through something. No! Su Yi glared at them angrily. He no longer paid attention to these people, and began to think about some problems. Kid, if you want to do a favor to the Xianjian sect and those rogue cultivators, why don't you just give them the Bawang sect's quota? Especially those 3 rogue cultivators. Perhaps they might even join the Overlord sect for the sake of these 3 spots in the grand meeting. Suddenly, Merciless West walked to Su Yi's side, took a sip of wine, and then said, the Overlord sect had already successfully obtained a spot for the grand meeting. However, Su Yi was the only one who could take the spot. They could easily give the remaining 19 spots to other people. Is that okay? Su Yi was stunned and looked at Merciless West and asked. He thought that if he was the only one participating in the challenge tournament, it meant that the Bawang sect only had 1 quota. But from what his big brother said, it didn't seem to be the case. Every sect has 20 quotas. The Alliance will only ask which sects have obtained the quota. They don't care who you send to participate in the next round. Some sects have defended in the challenge tournament and obtained the quota, but in the end, someone died. In the end, they will let others take the quota and participate in the next round. So, the Bawang sect still has 19 quotas, which can be used as a favor. Merciless West thought for a while and explained to Su Yi. You can do that? Su Yi was a little surprised, but then a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. I'm rich, I'm rich. Su Yi smiled like a blooming flower, rubbing his hands and licking his lips. His eyes shone with a bright green light, as if he was a hungry wolf that had seen its prey. He chuckled and said, We're going to hit the jackpot this time. Everyone in the room was stunned by his expression. They had no idea what was going on. Boss, did you take the wrong medicine? Handsome Su immediately jumped off Su Yi's shoulder, wanting to get as far away from this lunatic as possible. Merciless West also looked at Su Yi with concern for an idiot. She had no idea what this guy was thinking. Su Yi seemed to feel that there was something wrong with his image. He smiled and put away his excited expression. He asked the people around him, Our Bawang sect still has 19 quotas. What price do you think would be suitable if I were to sell these quotas? What the F***ck? You can do that? This time, it was Merciless West's turn to be shocked. They really couldn't understand Su Yi's brain circuit. Why would he think of selling the quotas? However, after thinking about it, this method was not impossible. Many forces came to participate in the Alliance Conference in order to pass the preliminaries and get one of the 10 quotas. However, it was really too difficult. Most forces would be eliminated. If the Bawang sect suddenly took out 19 quotas to sell, there would definitely be a lot of people who would break their heads to get them. As long as the price was reasonable, there was no need to worry about making a fortune. How about 100,000 2-star origin stones for one quota? Is this price reasonable? Su Yi's face was full of excitement. He couldn't hide the excitement in his heart. It seems a little too greedy. The 7-star sword school only offered a reward of 200,000 2-star origin stones for me. Even an ordinary third-rate sect wouldn't be willing to exchange 100,000 2-star origin stones for one quota. Su Yi started to count with his fingers. He was thinking about how to set a reasonable price. 20,000 2-star origin stones will do. Any less and I would be at a loss. Su Yi muttered to himself. He felt that 20,000 2-star origin stones for one quota should be something that others could accept. It wasn't a loss for him. This guy only has money in his eyes. Merciless West and the others were helpless. Looking at Su Yi's serious face, they only felt that this sect leader was a complete money grubber. Especially Merciless West, this guy's character was simply too fickle. Chapter 1044. One slot costs 22 2-star vitality stones. If all 19 slots are sold, that would be 380,000 2-star vitality stones, which is equivalent to 38 million 1-star vitality stones. That's quite a sum of money. Su Yi kept mumbling to himself, his eyes twinkling like stars. How could he not be excited at the thought of such a sizable sum of money? Merciless West, Little Handsome Su, the Green Emperor, and the Yin-Yang Underworld Emperor ignored Su Yi and went to cultivate. Su Yi did not waste too much time. 38 million 1-star vitality stones was indeed a windfall for him, but he had to get it first. Besides, he owed the Spirit Treasures Pavilion 1 billion vitality stones. Compared to that, this amount of money was nothing. It was a quiet night. On the second day, Su Yi and the others went to the square in the afternoon to watch the final battle. When they appeared, the square was in an uproar. The young man from the Bawang sect represented absolute power. Even if he was alone, he was far more powerful than the combined strength of 20 disciples from other sections. He had advanced early and obtained one of the 10 qualifications. Such a legendary figure was talked about enthusiastically by everyone. The Green Sanctuary sect is quite strong. They have been defending until now. Su Yi glanced at the arena and found that the people from the Green Sanctuary sect were still on it. Other than the 4 extraordinary rogue cultivators, the arrogant young man was the strongest. He was definitely at the 8th level of Yuan Zhen stage. After asking around a little, Su Yi and the others found out that the Green Sanctuary sect had set up an arena yesterday evening and had been guarding it until now. Moreover, they had preserved their battle strength, and there were not many people who dared to challenge them. And the Sunblaze sect, they seemed to be quite lucky? Su Yi looked around and saw another arena. The people from the Sunblaze sect were still on it. However, compared to the Green Sanctuary sect, they were a little more miserable. More than half of them were injured, and some of them were quite serious. It could be said that their battle strength was greatly affected. One had to admit that the Green Sanctuary sect and the rogue cultivators were very powerful. Otherwise, they would not have been able to defend until now. This is the second chance for the Sunblaze sect. They were defeated in the morning. However, after resting for a while, they chased the people who defeated them out of the arena again. Su Yi heard this news after asking some of the spectators around him. However, looking at the current state of the Sunblaze sect, it might not be easy for them to continue defending until the end. However, this matter was hard to say. After all, those who could fight had already fought. Those who had fought had either suffered some losses or injuries. Suddenly, just as Su Yi was thinking about it, a few familiar figures walked to the examination table, handed over their tokens, and stepped into the ring. The Sunblaze sect, the Sunblaze sect, the Sunblaze sect. Xianjian sect has chosen the Sunblaze sect. I guess they can avenge Qin Chuan and the other rogue cultivators? Merciless West, who was next to Su Yi, raised her eyebrows and said. Su Yi heard and nodded slightly. Under their gaze, the 17 disciples of the Xianjian sect, Chun Chu, Shun Hong, and Yi Haokong stood in front of the 20 people from the Sun Blaze sect. When they saw Chen Chuan and the other two, Tang Tianxing, Shi Rongchang and Du Zhao from the Sun Blaze sect were clearly stunned. I didn't expect the 3 of you to find another sect. You're in luck. Tang Tianxing was a young man with a protruding mouth and an ape-like chin. His entire face carried a sinister aura, which made people feel uncomfortable. He faced Chen Chu, Shun Hong, and Yi Haokong and spoke coldly. However, Chen Chu and the rest ignored him. After exchanging glances with Yu Wenshuan, Ji Hanua, and the rest of the Xianjian sect, they immediately attacked. Rays of sword light shot out from the young expert. It was like a rain of light that swept fiercely towards the Sun Blaze sect. When the Xianjian sect attacked without saying a word, the faces of the Sun Blaze sect disciples turned pale. As the battle continued, their expressions became more and more gloomy. This was because the Xianjian sect's strength was too strong. Overall, they were slightly stronger than the Sun Blaze sect. Most importantly, they had not participated in any of the battles since the day before. They were simply waiting for the exhausted Xianjian sect to attack with their full strength. Soon, they gained the upper hand. The Xianjian sect only had one chance left. Hence, they attacked even more fiercely, trying to chase the Sun Blaze sect out of the arena at the lowest cost. The Sun Blaze sect went back on their words. They asked for it this time. Su Yi muttered as he watched the battle. He knew that the Xianjian sect might have done this to give him face, or they might have valued Chen Chu and the rest and wanted to befriend them. Hence, they chose to attack the Sun Blaze sect as soon as the battle started. The outcome will be decided soon. The Xianjian sect should be defending the arena. Huang Jian added. Indeed, it did not take long for the Sun Blaze sect to admit defeat under the powerful attacks of the Xianjian sect. They had already lost a lot of combat strength. If they continued to fight with the Xianjian sect, they could not guarantee that the Xianjian sect would not kill them. Especially Tang Tianxing and the rest of the rogue cultivators. They were afraid that Chen Chu would take the opportunity to kill them. Damn it! After being chased out of the arena by the Xianjian sect, Tang Tianxing could not stop cursing. His face was ashen and the veins on his forehead were popping. He did not expect that they would be defeated by Chen Chu and the rest. Based on the situation, the Sun Blaze sect still had a chance. It's all the fault of those rogue cultivators. If it were not for them, the Xianjian sect would not have targeted us. The disciples of the Sun Blaze sect cursed and blamed Tang Tianxing, Shi Rongchang, and Du Zhao. The second chance had been used and the Sun Blaze sect was eliminated. The Sun Blaze sect is really good at kicking people to the curb after they've outlived their usefulness. When he heard those words, Tang Tianxing suppressed his temper that was about to explode and replied in a deep voice. Both parties were just using each other and cooperating with each other. It was really shameful to blame them for their failure. As a result, the Sun Blaze sect and Tang Tianxing's rogue cultivators turned against each other. Serves them right. Some of the onlookers scoffed and scolded them gloatingly. This matter did not affect the crowd too much. Soon, they paid attention to the situation in the arena again. Not long after the Xianjian sect won the arena, there were 2 other forces who went up to challenge them. However, these 2 forces were relatively weaker. Hence, they were defeated by the Xianjian sect. However, after these 2 fierce battles, the Xianjian sect had also lost a lot of their members. Some of their disciples were even injured. Although they could still fight, their combat strength was greatly reduced. Liuhe sect, this should be the second time they're going to challenge us. Under Su Yi's observation, the people from Liuhe sect appeared in one of the arenas and began to challenge the defending forces. The strength of Liuhe sect was not weak. Although it was not as strong as the Xianjian sect and the Qingming sect, it was still very strong. However, they were not lucky. The opponents they challenged actually hid their strength. Under a sudden burst of strength, the Lyoha sect was caught off guard and lost with a slight disadvantage. What a pity! Sui felt that it was a pity. He had a good impression of Lyoha sect. The two elders who led the team to 9-Star City and the children of the sect master of Lyoha sect had nodded to Sui before. However, it was only a nodding acquaintance. I can consider selling the Bawang sect quota to them. Suddenly, Sui had a bright idea, and thought so. Since Lyoha sect did not have a bad relationship with him and had shown some goodwill when they met several times, Sui was also willing to make friends with such a force. However, the premise was that the other party must take out enough chips to exchange for the Bawang sect quota in his hands. There are less than 2 hours left before the arena competition is over. At that time, the forces that remain in the arena will have the qualifications. Those who have not used up their chances will be nullified. Just as Sui was thinking, Huang Jian, who was next to him, spoke again and said softly. This was one of the rules of the arena competition. Once the time was up and the battle in the arena was completely over, the arena champion would be the last to advance and obtain the qualification for the next round. There are only 2 hours left? Sui raised his eyebrows. The preliminaries were about to come to an end, and there would probably not be many changes in the arena. Those who were able to stay in the arena must have a certain degree of confidence. It would not be easy for the others to withstand it. Hey, what is the Qingming sect trying to do? Suddenly, Merciless West was stunned and said with great surprise. Sui and the others all turned their heads and saw a group of people on the Qingming sect's arena wanting to challenge them. At first glance, it was obvious that the Qingming sect, who had a lot of advantages, had admitted defeat and stepped down from the arena. After stepping down from the arena, they did not stay for long. Instead, they went straight to the Xianjian sect's arena. The Qingming sect had been guarding their arena since yesterday evening. They still had one more chance to challenge them. This time, they gave up on their own arena and used this chance to challenge Xianjian sect's arena. The Qingming sect and Xianjian sect are going to fight to the death. Sui frowned and mumbled. He knew that the Qingming sect and Xianjian sect had a huge grudge against each other. If nothing went wrong, Ji Tianfu would definitely attack the Qingming sect after this alliance conference to avenge the kidnapping of Ji Hanua a few months ago. However, this was the second time the Qingming sect had plotted against Xianjian sect in this alliance conference. At this time, the people from Xianjian sect had just finished a battle and had not consumed any pills to recover. However, the Qingming sect was standing in front of them. Qingming sect, do you really think that Xianjian sect is so easy to mess with? In the crowd, Ji Tianfu's eyes were as cold as water. Chapter 1045. After the departure of Ma Guangfeng and the other 3 rogue cultivators, Xianjian faction's overall strength had been greatly weakened. Chen Chuan and the other 2 were also weaker than the 4 rogue cultivators. The missing person was made up by Xianjian faction's disciples. Therefore, Xianjian faction is definitely at a disadvantage. They will not be able to defeat Green Sanctuary faction. Merciless West raised his eyebrows and said calmly. Just as he was speaking, the battle in the arena had begun. Green Sanctuary faction and Xianjian faction had always been enemies with each other. Now that their young disciples were facing off against each other, the smell of gunpowder could be heard everywhere. Get all these people from Xianjian faction out of the arena. The arrogant young man from Green Sanctuary faction shouted as he pointed his sword at the people from Xianjian faction. Jiang Su, even if Xianjian faction is no match for you, we will still make sure you suffer. Yuan Xuan stared at the young man opposite him and said coldly. After the 2 of them finished talking, they started to fight. When the rest of the disciples saw this, they immediately rushed out and a chaotic battle broke out. Suddenly, the entire arena was filled with layers of light that shot up into the sky. A large amount of energy was swirling around and wreaking havoc. The battle between Green Sanctuary faction and Xianjian faction was extremely intense. Both of them had given their all and were fighting with their lives on the line. There is no doubt that Xianjian faction will be defeated. However, I don't think Ji Tianfu is that stupid. He will not let his disciples fight Green Sanctuary faction to the death. Sui thought to himself as he watched the battle in the arena. Sui felt that it was a pity. After all, he had a good relationship with Xianjian faction and Green Sanctuary faction had a grudge with him in the past. Sui, who was watching the battle, suddenly had an idea. A strange idea popped into his mind, and his eyes suddenly became bright and sparkling. Wait for me here. Sui greeted Shi Wuqing, Huang Jian, and the others beside him. Then, he ran away and rushed to the vicinity of the arena. What is this kid up to now? Seeing Sui like this, Merciless West instinctively felt that this guy was going to do something strange again. The few of them placed their gazes on Sui and saw him walking to the side of the middle-aged Origin Emperor who was hosting the convention. Senior, I have something to ask you, Sui cupped his hands and said to the middle-aged man. What is it? The middle-aged man who presided over the meeting was also greatly shocked by Sui's performance yesterday. If nothing unexpected happened, there would definitely be experts from the Alliance who would want to take him in as a disciple after the preliminaries. Therefore, the middle-aged man's attitude was quite polite when he saw the kid running over. Senior, it's like this. I want to give up my Bawang Sex ring to someone else, then use my remaining 2 chances to fight for the ring again. Sui blinked and looked at the middle-aged man. What? Hearing the words of the young man in front of him, the middle-aged man was stunned. What this kid meant was to give up his combat ring to someone else, and then go snatch it from someone else. The middle-aged man was a little dumbfounded. If that was the case, with this kid's strength, it would be really easy for him to take another ring. Senior, what I mean is... Sui opened his mouth and was about to explain. Don't say any more. This is not in accordance with the rules. The middle-aged man interrupted him and shook his head. If that was the case, wouldn't the final result be that the Overlord sect would be able to occupy both arenas? It seems that before the preliminaries began, you only mentioned the process of the competition. You didn't say that a sect can't occupy 2 rings, right? Sui scratched his head. He really didn't hear of such a rule before participating in the convention. The reason why such a thought popped up in his mind was because it was absolutely reasonable. The middle-aged man was speechless and didn't know how to answer. What this kid said made sense. The Alliance didn't have such a strict rule. No one said that each sect could only occupy 1 ring. Senior, please hurry up and tell me the result. The time is almost up. Any later and it will be too late. Sui raised his finger and pointed at the sun that had already set. There were less than 2 hours left for the competition. If this dragged on, everything would be over. This has never happened before. I can't make the decision. Wait here for a while. I'll ask the experts in the Alliance. After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he looked at Sui deeply and then walked towards the stands. Looking at the middle-aged man's back, Sui started to feel anxious. Such a thought suddenly popped up in his mind. However, he felt that it was reasonable to a certain extent. However, the Alliance meeting was organized by the 10 biggest forces in the Chaos Plane. It would only count if they agreed. No matter how wonderful his thoughts were, it was useless. Besides, the reason why Sui wanted to do this was because he saw that Xianjian sect was in a difficult situation. Obviously, the Green Sanctuary sect had the upper hand. With the addition of the few strong rogue cultivators, their strength had increased tremendously. On the other hand, the disciples of Xianjian sect were not weak. However, they had just suffered a great loss. In addition, their overall strength was slightly weaker. They would definitely not be able to last until the end. Coincidentally, Su Yi had a good relationship with Xianjian faction. If his idea worked, he would be able to get a slot for them. While Su Yi was deep in thought, the middle-aged man had already walked up to the experts in the stands and relayed Su Yi's words to the people of the Alliance. That kid is really not easy to deal with. Could it be that he wants to occupy 2 slots? On the stands, an old man in a red robe said in a daze. The old man in the red robe had a white beard and deep wrinkles on his face. However, his eyes were as bright as the brightest stars in the night sky. His appetite is really big and his courage is also really big. Another old man spoke out, his eyes flickering as he spoke. I don't think this will work. If we do as he says, with his strength, he can take down 1 battle ring. With 2 challenges, he can take down 3 battle rings in total. If everyone does as he says, won't the Alliance meet be a mess? A sturdy old man in his 60s thought for a moment, then waved his hand and said. Many people at the side heard this and nodded lightly, agreeing with this statement. The strength of the third-rate forces was uneven. For example, Xianjian sect and Green Sanctuary sect were very close to being second-rate forces. If there was one force that could defeat all the other forces in the Alliance, with the rules that the young man had just asked for, there was a chance that they could take down 3 battle rings. Anyway, you are so strong. No matter which battle you go to, no one can defeat you. It is too much of a bully. I think we should try according to what the kid said. The old man in the red robe said again. I don't think that's appropriate. Everyone was shocked. However, none of them dared to object directly. They only felt that the old man in the red robe's words were inappropriate. At the same time, some people stopped talking. It was as if they were afraid of the old man in the red robe. There's nothing inappropriate about it. The kid is right. We don't have any hard and fast rules. So, it's okay if you say it's okay. In the end, all the interpretation rights still belong to the Alliance. The old man in the red robe smacked his lips and said. The rest of the people fell into deep thought. Other than 2 people, the rest did not dare to express too much objection. That's too easy for the kid. The Alliance meet is held once every 50 years. This has never happened before. Just as Elder Xie said, everything is decided by the Alliance. The preliminaries are about to end. We don't have to do this. On the left side of the old man in the red robe, an old man in black who was similar in age to him frowned. As soon as he said that, many people around him nodded. It was obvious that the old man in black had a high status. It seems that Elder Xie has taken a fancy to the kid. However, I am also very interested in him. Elder Xie, you have to follow the rules we agreed on. On the right side of the old man in the red robe, another old man in a green robe spoke. This old man's eyes were like copper bells. When he spoke, it was obvious that he was not a kind person. He glanced at the old man in the red robe, as if he was reminding him of something. Elder Bai, you think too much. This matter will naturally be done according to the rules. The old man in the red robe did not care about the attitude of the old man in the green robe. He said, let's solve the problem raised by the kid first. I still think we can do as he said. However, we can't let him off so easily. Didn't that guy want 2 battle rings? Sure. We can set a new rule in the preliminaries of the Alliance Conference. No matter who it is, if you want more than 1 battle ring, you have to accept challenges from multiple forces at the same time. As long as you are capable enough, you can have all 10 battle rings. What do you all think of this method? Is that so? The rest of the people raised their eyebrows one by one and started to think. This method is not bad. If the kid wants 2 battle rings, he has to accept challenges from 2 forces at the same time. His strength is strong, but it is definitely limited. It may be easy for him to fight against 20 people, but it will not be easy for him to fight against 40 people at the same time. The old man in the green robe nodded, indicating that he agreed with the old man in the red robe. Among all the third-rate forces and countless rogue cultivators, no one dared to say that they could face the joint forces of two mountain sects and remain undefeated. No one, including the young man, dared to believe that he could do it easily. It's decided then. Let him give up the 10th battle ring before he can continue to challenge. Moreover, he only has one chance. If he fails, the Bawang sect's quota will be revoked. Let him think twice before he acts. Chapter 1046. When the people from the various forces heard this, they all nodded silently. No one objected any more. The most important reason was probably not the strength of the red-robed elder or the fierceness of the forces behind him, but the fact that this move would not bring any harm to the top 10 forces of the alliance. The Chaos Zone had many third-rate and fourth-rate forces and countless rogue cultivators. In the eyes of these people, it did not matter who was qualified. The middle-aged man of the Origin Emperor realm took the order and returned to the arena under Su Yi's expectant gaze. When he relayed the decision made by the experts of the alliance, Su Yi was overjoyed. That's great. His face was full of excitement. He was extremely excited about this result. You have to give up the arena that you have won and accept challenges from many parties. Only if you succeed can you become the new arena master. Otherwise, you will lose the qualification to participate in the alliance. Think carefully before you make a decision. The middle-aged man stared deeply at Sui again, feeling that this young man was too different from the rest. He continued, in addition, for the sake of fairness, you have to accept at least 3 rounds of challenges before you can be counted. Unless no one dares to challenge you, then you will automatically advance after 2 hours. The last sentence was also given by the experts of the alliance. Is that so? Sui touched his nose and raised his eyebrows. He could accept this request. After all, this was the only way to be fair. In particular, he had to accept 3 rounds of challenges. If there was no such rule, Su-Yi would only enter the arena when the competition was about to end. Then, the other forces would not be able to compete. Okay, I accept. Seeing that there was not much time left, Su-Yi immediately nodded and agreed. The middle-aged man looked at him and smiled angrily. Can you still not accept? Su-Yi rolled his eyes and did not delay. He directly let the middle-aged man announce his decision. At the same time, he ran back to the crowd and found Ji Tianfu. Then, he informed Merciless West and the others. The Bawang sect has given up the 10th arena. Is there anyone willing to be the arena master? When the middle-aged man announced the news, the whole square was in an uproar. What? The Bawang sect gave up the 10th ring? Why? Is that kid stupid? He actually wants to give up the right to participate in the Grand Assembly? It's hard for other people to get the right to the Grand Assembly even if they break their head. He gave it away just like that. What is this Bawang sect trying to do? It can't be that simple. What is the Bawang sect up to? Everyone was stunned. Before this, they were confused. They didn't know what the teen and the middle-aged man were talking about. Now, it seemed like they were definitely discussing this matter. For a moment, the entire square was in an uproar. No one could figure out what the Bawang sect was up to. How could he give up a good spot just like that? My Sunblaze sect wants this spot. Just when the crowd was still confused, a loud voice rang out. Following which, someone quickly rushed to the battle arena. Following that, many forces reacted. An arena represented the right to participate in the Grand Assembly. Since the other party had already given it up, where else could he find such a bargain? My Lapis Lazuli Palace wants the 10th arena. My Lifeng sect also wants this right. My Soaring Rainbow Pavilion too. My Burning Sky Pavilion also wants to fight for it. As the people from the Sunblaze sect spoke, the rest of the forces seemed to have woken up from a dream. They immediately shouted and rushed to the front of the arena. Everyone was filled with a strong sense of hope, wanting to get that spot. Only a fool wouldn't want such a good thing. Who cared what the Bawang sect was up to? A total of 17 sects want it. Let's draw lots to decide. The middle-aged man quickly ordered someone to bring some blank bamboo stick. Using his finger as a pen, he carved a mark on each bamboo stick. One of the bamboo sticks was different from the others. The 17 bamboo sticks were placed in the pot. The middle-aged man held it in his hand and let the forces who had just registered come forward to draw. Those who drew lots were all below the origin void realm. In front of the middle-aged man who was at the origin emperor realm, they didn't have to worry about playing any trick. Soon, the results of the draw were out. The Sunblaze sect has drawn the 10th arena's new champion, the middle-aged man said in a clear voice, which made the people from the other forces feel sad. On the other hand, the group of people from the Sunblaze sect was overjoyed. It was as if everyone was injected with chicken blood. Great! We actually got another opportunity to participate in the arena competition. A young man cried out in excitement. This was simply a turn of events, a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Originally, they had completely lost the opportunity. Who would have thought that such good news would suddenly fall from the sky? The arena competition is about to end. There's less than 2 hours left. As long as we can withstand this last segment, we will be able to qualify for the next round of the competition. There was also a young man who was extremely excited as he spoke. We can't let our guard down. The last person to go up will bite like a mad dog. They're very fierce. Now that we have 3 less powerful experts, there will definitely be many people who will think that we're easy to bully and target us. A calmer person thought for a moment and analyzed. Hearing his words, the rest of the people also quieted down and nodded one after another. Right at this moment, they caught a glimpse of 3 figures walking over quickly from not far away. Everyone, we had some misunderstandings before, but we can talk about this in the future. I think that you will definitely need the help of the 3 of us now. Why don't we work together once more? A young man with a protruding mouth and ape-like cheeks arrived before the Sunblaze sect group. Behind him were 2 other young men. These 3 people were Tang Tianxing, Shi Rongchang, and Du Zhao, who had replaced Chen Chuan and the other 2 to cooperate with the Sunblaze sect. They were all rogue cultivators and were powerful. Seeing them appear, the person in charge of the Sunblaze sect fell silent for a moment before saying straightforwardly, "All right, let's not talk about the past anymore. I hope that we can completely take this spot this time." Tang Tianxing and the other 2 were quite strong. If they could work together again, it would be very helpful for them to defend the arena. Right now, the Sunblaze sect did not have a better choice. "All right, let's go up the arena then." Tang Tianxing smiled, looking very treacherous. A total of 20 people from both sides stepped onto the 10th arena and replaced the Bawang sect's position. The Sunblaze sect is really lucky. They actually became arena champions again. Out of the 17 bamboo sticks, they just had to pick one. Their luck is really good. With their strength, there's a high chance that they can defend until the end. Below the arena, many people spoke with jealousy and envy. The Sunblaze sect had just been chased out of the arena by the Xianjian sect not long ago, and they were able to get back up again. One had to admit that they were really lucky. Their strength was not weak to begin with. In addition to the other forces, they had already lost a lot of strength, and there were not many who could fight them. Therefore, many people even thought that the Sunblaze sect had completely taken this spot. Not only that, but the Sunblaze sect members also had the same thought. Although many of them tried their best to suppress their emotions, they could not help but show excitement. Vaguely, the entire Sunblaze sect's aura changed, as if they were looking forward to being challenged. The Xianjian sect admits defeat. At that moment, Ji Tianfu's voice was heard from afar. Everyone near the arena could hear him. At that moment, the Xianjian sect and the Green Sanctuary sect were in the midst of an intense battle. The Green Sanctuary sect was strong, but it would not be easy for them to defeat the Xianjian sect. If they really fought to the end, they would definitely lose a layer of skin to win. Sect leader. Father. The disciples of the Xianjian sect were surprised, but they did not disobey Ji Tianfu. Yuanxuan, Ji Hanhua, and the rest stopped fighting and jumped down from the arena and walked towards them. Yuanxuan, so the Xianjian sect is really so weak. Looking at the backs of the Xianjian sect members, someone from the Green Sanctuary sect mocked. At least they know what's good for them. Otherwise, half of their disciples would not be able to walk out of the arena today. The young man named Jiang Su said coldly with a murderous aura. Young sect leader is right. Unfortunately, the Xianjian sect is just a bunch of cowards. Beside him, many disciples of the Green Sanctuary sect agreed. Jiang Su was their young sect leader. His cultivation level was high and he was powerful. He had already stepped into level 8 Yuan Zhen realm. Even if he was placed in a second-tier force, he would not have many opponents in the same generation. Between Jiang Su and Yuanxuan, they had fought before. Due to the bad relationship between the two sects, they saw each other as enemies. Senior. Some of the Xianjian sect disciples were angry and wanted to refute. Ignore them. Yuanxuan stopped the disciple and led everyone back to Ji Tianfu's side. That brat Sui, what is he trying to do? Ji Tianfu shifted his gaze and looked at the young man who had spoken to Merciless West and the rest. He was puzzled. Sui was the one who asked Xianjian sect to surrender. Regarding this, Ji Tianfu did not think too much about it. He did not even have the heart to resist. Anyway, judging from the situation, the Xianjian sect would not be able to defend the arena. They might as well surrender so that their disciples would not die. However, the thing that puzzled Ji Tianfu the most was the fact that Sui gave up the 10th arena. Somehow, Ji Tianfu felt that Sui was not a simple person. Based on his personality, he would not do anything that would cause him to lose out. Therefore, not only did Ji Tianfu not feel that there was anything wrong with it, he was also looking forward to it. Ji Tianfu really wanted to see what kind of tricks that brat could still come up with since they had already reached this step. Young sect leader, what is Bawang's sect up to? Chapter 1047. I don't care what he's up to as long as he doesn't affect the Green Sanctuary sect. The arrogant young man, Jiang Su, said with a gleam in his eyes. He was interested in the young man from the Bawang sect. After all, the young man had caused a lot of trouble for the 7-Star Sword School and the Gimdeo sect. These few sects were not far from the Green Sanctuary sect and were located in the same area. Besides, the young man's performance in the primary contest was too outstanding and no one could ignore him. However, Jiang Su did not care about these things. All they needed to do was to defend the arena under their feet until the end and successfully qualify for the contest. If they could chase the Xianjian sect out of the arena, it would be a huge gain. There's only 1 hour left. The result is basically set. As time passed, many people started to care about the final result. At the same time, many people kept looking at the young man who had already left the arena. The young man from the Bawang sect had voluntarily given up on an arena. Everyone wanted to know what he was thinking. Young man, are you sure you want to challenge multiple arenas at the same time? The middle-aged man who was in charge of the contest asked seriously in front of Sui. Of course. Sui nodded to show that he was sure. Now, only the 3rd and 10th arenas are unchallenged. Do you want to wait for more arenas to be empty or do you want to challenge these 2 arenas at the same time? The middle-aged man looked at the young man in front of him with sparkling eyes. At this moment, the other 8 arenas had 2 factions carrying out their final battles. Only the 3rd and 10th arenas were empty. On the 3rd arena, it was the Green Sanctuary sect that had just forced the Xianjian sect to surrender. On the 10th arena that Sui had given up, It was the Sunblaze sect that was extremely lucky. The people from these two forces had already decided that they would be able to defend until the end and obtain the final qualification. If Sui wanted to challenge them now, he could only choose between these two options. Otherwise, he could wait for the other forces to emerge victorious. I'm not waiting anymore. I'll challenge these two arenas. Sui thought for a while and shook his head. He knew that with his strength, it would not be difficult for him to win if he challenged all three arenas at the same time. However, there was not much time left and he did not know when the other forces would emerge victorious. Secondly, he wanted to preserve some of his strength and did not want to reveal all of his strength. It would be disadvantageous for him. Thirdly, the forces in the other 8 arenas had nothing to do with Su Yi's side. Su Yi's side. However, things were different when it came to the Green Sanctuary sect and the Sunblaze sect. Given the bad relationship between the Green Sanctuary sect and the Xianjian sect, as well as the grudge between the 3 loose cultivators from the Sunblaze sect and Chen Chuan, Sui felt that he would not hesitate to take action. He had already considered the Xianjian sect and Chen Chuan as friends. Not to mention, young Master Wang and the others from the Green Sanctuary sect had once attacked him. Although no one knew about this, Sui had never forgotten about it. The middle-aged man nodded. Then, he rose into the air and announced loudly, "The Overlord sect will challenge the 3rd and 10th arena simultaneously." What? When the middle-aged man said that, the square fell into silence. Everyone was dumbfounded. On the arena, the Green Sanctuary sect and the Sunblaze sect were even more confused and unable to make heads or tails of the situation. The champions of the 3rd and 10th arenas can join forces to fight against the Bawang sect, the middle-aged man said again. Then, he explained the rules that had just been announced. In an instant, the square was in an uproar. What the F***ck? The Alliance meeting has such rules? You can play like that? Challenging 2 arenas at the same time with 40 people. Just thinking about it makes me feel hopeless. It's basically impossible. It might not be possible for others, but it's hard to say for that young man from the Bawang sect. 3 rounds. He has to go through at least 3 rounds of challenges. Unless no one enters the arena, he will automatically advance. This is too much. This has never happened before in the Alliance meeting, right? It would be strange if it had. Since ancient times, how many forces have dared to do this? That's simply courting death. Even if someone has done it before, they probably didn't think in this direction. Most people don't have such a strange way of thinking. It's mainly because that guy from the Bawang sect is too strong. There's really hope for him to win 2 arenas. All kinds of discussions rose, causing the square to be bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone stared at the young man in front of the arenas in a daze. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Yesterday, the young man had shocked everyone with a single brilliant feat, causing countless people to gasp in admiration. Originally, after his automatic advancement, everyone thought that he had already shone brightly and that it was enough. The primary selection this time was no longer his stage. Who would have thought that just an hour before the end of the preliminaries, that fellow would cause another round of trouble, causing countless people to be shocked. The most shocked people were the 40 young people in the 2 arenas. How could this be? How could this be? Some people in the Sunblaze sect had already begun to panic and their teeth were chattering. They had witnessed the young man's arrogance below the arenas yesterday. He had fought against the top 20 young experts of 2 sects alone and killed all of his opponents in an absolutely crushing manner. When that scene was replayed again, it still caused them to feel uncontrollably shocked. What do we do? How can we defeat that young man? Some people were about to cry. The young man from the Bawang sect had left an extremely fierce impression in their minds, and they couldn't help but feel afraid. The Gimdeo sect and the Seven-Star Sword School were both much stronger than the Sunblaze sect in terms of overall strength. The two sects had sent out their top 10 disciples to fight, but they were all killed. This kind of result made the people from the Sunblaze sect unable to muster any courage to face that young man. Don't panic. He wants to challenge 2 arenas at the same time, and the Green Sanctuary sect will fight with us. They're not to be trifled with either, Tang Tianxing said in a deep voice to everyone from the Sunblaze sect. Although that was what he said, his gaze was extremely serious and his heart was filled with uncertainty. Now, all of their hopes were placed on the Green Sanctuary sect. They were a very powerful force, and even the Xianjian sect was no match for them. That young man wants to make an enemy out of the Green Sanctuary sect? On the Green Sanctuary sect's side, the disciples were all furious. They naturally knew how strong the young man from the Bawang sect was, so they were all furious at him. Challenging 2 arenas at the same time? Does he really think he's invincible? The Green Sanctuary sect's young sect master, Jiang Su, snorted coldly as he glanced at the young man below. He knew that he was no match for that young man, but Jiang Su didn't think that the 20 people from the Green Sanctuary sect and the Sunblaze sect would have no chance of stopping him. Young sect master, we should be careful. That young man is very strange. The Seven-Star Sword School and the Gimdeo sect have suffered losses at his hands. We can't let our guard down. The rogue cultivator, Ma Guangfeng, walked up to Jiang Su and said solemnly. His point of view was completely different from Jiang Su's. He felt that the outcome of today's battle was already uncertain and that the Green Sanctuary sect was most likely going to be eliminated. Su-yi, that young man, in the crowd, Ji Tianfu was already speechless. That young man could always do something unexpected. Is he really that confident? Yuan Xian's face was also filled with shock as he muttered in disbelief. Su-yi can definitely do it. He won't do anything that he's not confident in. Ji Tianfu's eyes were clear, and one could vaguely see the infatuation in the depths of his eyes, causing Ji Tianfu to shake his head with a bitter smile. Let's begin. Soon, the middle-aged man hosting the competition spoke again. Su-yi nodded and flew up to the 10th arena. Under the middle-aged man's signal, the 20 figures from the Green Sanctuary sect also flew out from the 3rd arena and arrived at the 10th arena. Su-yi stood in the middle, with the people from the Sunblaze sect on his right and the people from the Green Sanctuary sect on his left. Young man, you've already offended the Gimdeo sect and the Seven-Star Sword School. Do you still want to become enemies with the Green Sanctuary sect? I advise you to stop now. Otherwise, regardless of whether you win today, the Green Sanctuary sect and the Bawang sect will be irreconcilable. Jiang Su pulled out his long sword and pointed it at Su-yi from afar as he spoke coldly. Through the previous battles between the Seven-Star Sword School, the Gimdeo sect, and the Bawang sect, they could roughly determine the overall strength of the Bawang sect. It was unlikely that they would be stronger than the two sects combined. Therefore, Jiang Su believed that once this young man became enemies with the Green Sanctuary sect, it would be no different from courting death. If he was smart enough, he would definitely choose to protect the entire Bawang sect instead of relying on his strength to do whatever he wanted. Are you threatening me? I met a few people from the Green Sanctuary sect last time, and they were just as overbearing. However, they all died in my hands. Su-yi glanced at Jiang Su and said coldly. The people Su-yi was talking about were naturally the people led by young Master Wang. What? A disciple from the Green Sanctuary sect exclaimed, as if he suddenly thought of something. Are you talking about Wang Mo? Jiang Su also raised his head and looked coldly at Su-yi, wanting to hear his answer. I don't know if he's called Wang Mo. I only know that he's some young Master Wang from the Green Sanctuary sect. Su-yi sneered and replied without hiding anything. Young man, so Wang Mo and the disciples of the Green Sanctuary sect were all killed by you. Wang Su's expression changed completely as a murderous aura emanated from his body. Wang Mo and the disciples of the Green Sanctuary sect were not weak. They were killed while they were training in the mountains, but the murderer was never found. Until today, the truth of this case suddenly came to light. Chapter 1048. According to Su Yi, 3 of the 5 sects in the area where the Green Sanctuary sect was located had been thoroughly offended by this kid. Now, only the Xianjian sect and the Liuhe sect were left. There was no news of any hostility between them and the Bawang sect. You really have a lot of nonsense to say. It seems like the people of the Green Sanctuary sect only know how to talk. Su Yi sneered and said indifferently, "Kid, you're asking for it." Jiang Su was furious when he heard what Su Yi said. He immediately raised his sword and attacked. A bright sword radiance shot up to the sky and slashed down, aiming for Su Yi's head. "Let's go together." The rest of the disciples of the Green Sanctuary sect looked at each other. Suddenly, they rushed up and unleashed a terrifying wave of energy that enveloped the young man. They did not dare to let Jiang Su fight with Su Yi alone. If they were not careful, the young sect leader would die here. If that happened, they would not be able to answer to the sect leader. At that moment, not only the disciples of the Green Sanctuary sect, even Ma Guangfeng, Jie Shiyang, Qi Tsongxian, and Dong Qingzhou, the 4 rogue cultivators, used their full strength. They knew how terrifying Su Yi was and did not dare to slack off. Good timing. Seeing the 20 figures charging at him, Su Yi took out a big saber and held it in his hand. He shouted and rushed out to fight with the 20 people. What should we do? When the battle broke out, many of the people of the Sunblaze sect had not recovered from the shock and were still afraid. What else can we do? If we want to defend the arena, we have to join forces with the Green Sanctuary sect and defeat this young man. Tang Tianxing gritted his teeth and rushed up. The remaining disciples of the Sunblaze sect and rogue cultivators thought about it and felt that Ma Guangfeng's words made sense. Therefore, they did not waste any more time and unleashed powerful attacks toward the young man in the middle. In an instant, an unprecedented battle broke out on the 10th arena. 40 figures surrounded the young man in the middle and attacked him continuously. Don't swarm him. Follow the order and exhaust this kid. Jiang Su was very powerful, and he was also the young master of the Green Sanctuary sect. Under his instructions, the 20 people of the Green Sanctuary sect started to form some simple but effective formations. In an instant, the 20 people advanced and retreated according to the rules. Terrifying attacks rained down, causing the youth in the middle to be unable to stop for even a moment. He had to face attacks from time to time. Very soon, it was not just the people from the Green Sanctuary sect. The people from the Sunblaze sect caught up as well, forming an even more terrifying offensive. There were a total of 40 people from both sides, and all of them were rare powerhouses of the younger generation. Moreover, they were led by powerhouses like Jiang Su and Ma Guangfeng. In this way, there were at least 7 or 8 people besieging Su Yi in every attack. Wave after wave of terrifying energy surged out like the surging waves of the sea, setting off boundless violent waves. Rumble, the space around the stage was trembling as one attack after another collided and exploded. The destructive energy surged and rumbled without end. The stage that had been set up by the Origin Emperor expert was also shaking under the battle situation. However, it still stood firmly and did not collapse. Swoosh! Swoosh! The large saber in Su Yi's hand danced about in an airtight manner, blocking all the attacks as he stepped on the stage with ease. He didn't exert too much strength. The joint attacks of these people were indeed swift and violent, but Su Yi's cultivation was at the second level of the Origin Void stage, and he completely looked down upon these 40 people. Every time the 7 or 8 people attacked at the same time, it was impossible to shake Su Yi even with their strength added together. If it was a competition of endurance, Su Yi's void divine ocean was boundlessly vast, and his origin energy was endless and difficult to exhaust. He would not lose to these people no matter what. It's my turn now. Suddenly, Su Yi grunted lightly, and these words came out from his throat. He'd already roughly grasped the strength of his opponents, and the strongest were only a few people, led by Jiang Su, Ma Guangfeng, and the others. Raging Dragon Slash. The origin energy in Su Yi's entire body circulated madly as he abruptly raised his saber above his head and slashed down fiercely. OM. OM. A resplendent saber light instantly took form, and it was like an enormous pillar of light that was held in his hand as he slashed down abruptly. This saber light directly slashed a round of attacks from the Green Sanctuary sect and Sun Blaze sect disciples. The terrifying light struck down with peerless sharpness, and it instantly slashed apart the large area of attacks that were tangled together. Subsequently, Su Yi's saber light didn't lose momentum and easily tore apart all the energy attacks, shattering them into pieces. Amongst these few disciples, some of them suffered quite a bit of shock, and they couldn't help but cry out in shock, and they were extremely astonished. Dodge, let us do it! Right at this moment, Ma Guangfeng's loud shout sounded out, and an expanse of dense attacks once again assaulted over. The saber light and sword light were mixed together, crisscrossing as they wantonly assaulted with peerless might, and all of them charged towards Su Yi. You're still not enough. Su Yi's expression remained unchanged as he spoke indifferently, and he raised his saber to meet the attacks before fiercely slashing out once more. TSK. 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 Under this slash, the air let out a scorching sound of friction, and sparks shot out. Ma Guangfeng and his group's attacks were once again slashed apart by him, and a huge gap appeared. Following that, all the attacks were crushed into pieces, completely unable to pose any threat to Su Yi. After doing all this, Su Yi suddenly took a step forward, and directly arrived in front of Ma Guangfeng. His saber was shining brightly as he brazenly slashed towards him. When such a slash landed, Ma Guangfeng hastily unleashed an unprecedented amount of power, and then used the weapon in his hand to block it, wanting to resist. Puff! In the end, he was sent flying backwards, and his body drew an arc in the air as he crashed heavily into the arena, and blood spurted out from his mouth. His body lay on the ground, and he couldn't get up for a long time. Soon, there was no movement, and he seemed to have fainted. If it weren't for Jiang Su's timely arrival, and Su Yi had to stop to deal with him, the attack just now would have been stronger, and it would have definitely killed Ma Guangfeng in one blow. Su Yi continued to fight, and he faced Jiang Su and his group. Below the arena, pairs of eyes were filled with incomparable shock. The young man was too strong. Although his performance today was not as strong and bloody as yesterday's, and instead looked like he was taking a stroll in the park, it still brought a great impact to the audience. 40 people, that's 40 people. The sound of people rolling their throats was unparalleled, and they couldn't hide their astonishment. 1 against 40, this kind of thing was enough to make people feel aghast. It seems like Brother Su Yi is much stronger than we thought. Among the crowd of Xianjian faction, Chen Chuan's face was filled with shock. Even though he had witnessed the massacre yesterday, he was still extremely shocked. Ji Tianfu, Yu Wenxuan, Ji Hanhua, Shen Hong, Yi Haokong, and the others were all the same. How much strength does this kid have that he hasn't used? Could it be that, under the siege of 40 people, he still can't be forced to use all his strength? Ji Tianfu's eyes were clear, and he couldn't believe it. Compared to the 20 people from 7-Star Sword School and Gimdeo sect yesterday, the overall strength of 40 people was not doubled. However, based on their orderly attacks, even an ordinary original Void Realm expert would find it difficult to deal with them. However, Su Yi's situation seemed to be more relaxed. This kid is really a freak. On the square, Jiang Zikan, the sect leader of Green Sanctuary sect, was leading a group of disciples to watch the battle. At this moment, his face was extremely gloomy. He had heard the conversation on the arena earlier, and he knew that the young man was the murderer of Wang Mo and the others. Regarding this, Jiang Zikan already felt that his Green Sanctuary sect and Bawang sect would probably declare war on each other. That kid was their enemy, and he really hoped that he would die on the arena. However, looking at the current situation, the possibility of that happening was almost zero. Moreover, the people who would lose in the end would probably be Green Sanctuary sect and Sunblaze sect. When we return, we must think of a way to defeat Bawang sect and kill this kid. Otherwise, there will be no end of trouble in the future. Jiang Zikan's eyes flashed as he looked at the reckless young man on the arena with a murderous intent. On the arena, Su Yi forced Jiang Su and the others back with a slash of his saber. Then, relying on his absolute advantage in speed, he ruthlessly slashed out with his saber and sent Jiang Su flying. Under the absolute suppression of strength, the Green Sanctuary sect's young sect leader crashed onto the ground with a loud crash. Dense cracks appeared on the stone platform below him. Along with a mouthful of blood, Jiang Su's face instantly turned as white as a sheet of paper. His chi was dispirited, and he no longer had the strength to fight. Su Yi, on the other hand, did not even glance at him. This was because in Su Yi's eyes, his opponent's level of strength was no longer worthy of his attention. Su Yi had been hiding his true strength all this time. The competition was about to end, and these 40 people were no match for him at all. Therefore, his performance was similar to when he faced off against the 7-Star Sword School and Gimdeo sect in the previous round. Under the siege of 40 people, his attacks were not as clean and efficient, but he still had the upper hand. It's time to end this. After these words came out of Su Yi's mouth, he dragged his saber with one hand and slashed down again and again. As he disintegrated his opponent's attacks, he also sent many people flying, causing many of them to be severely injured. The disciples of Green Sanctuary sect and Sun Blaze sect were completely suppressed and ruthlessly trampled on at this moment. All of their orderly attacks were unable to take shape under the suppression of absolute strength. Su Yi's final target changed as he stared at Jiang Su, who was lying on the arena. The young man quickly stepped out and raised his saber, intending to behead the Green Sanctuary sect's young sect leader. The Green Sanctuary sect admits defeat. At this critical moment, Jiang Zikan, who was below the arena, sensed that something was wrong and suddenly shouted. Chapter 1049. What a pity! As Jiang Zikan admitted defeat, Su Yi smacked his lips and said regretfully. Then, everyone from the Green Sanctuary sect retreated to the edge of the arena. Those who were injured like Jiang Su were also taken away. We admit defeat as well. Immediately, someone from the Sun Blaze sect shouted in panic. Then, a group of figures retreated like the tide without hesitation. What a joke! The Green Sanctuary sect had already admitted defeat. If the Sun Blaze sect were to fight with this young man, they would definitely suffer in the end. Everyone could clearly distinguish the pros and cons, so it was not difficult to make a choice. Jiang Su was carried down the arena by the Green Sanctuary sect disciples and into the crowd of the Green Sanctuary sect. What a Bawang sect! Jiang Zikan fed his son a few pills. His eyes were deep and his face was so dark that it was about to drip water. This time, the Green Sanctuary sect could be considered to have suffered a huge setback. The enmity between them and the Bawang sect was completely formed. Let's go. After staring at the young man in the arena for a while, Jiang Zikan swung his sleeves and snorted coldly. He then led everyone from the Green Sanctuary sect away. The people from the Sun Blaze sect, Tang Tianxing, Ma Guangfeng, and the other independent cultivators all had extremely ugly expressions. In the end, they left unwillingly. That young man succeeded. He fought against 40 people alone and defeated 2 sects working together. He succeeded in his challenge and occupied 2 arenas. The Bawang sect is only 1 person, but it's enough to defeat dozens of people from the other sects. The Green Sanctuary sect and the Sun Blaze sect are considered lucky. No one died. This young man is amazing. If he can grow up safely, he will definitely be a tyrant in the future. In the square, everyone began to discuss fervently again. The actions of the young man from the Overlord sect had truly caused everyone to be shocked. It was not difficult for them to imagine that many years later, he would have a place in the world. Will anyone else go up to challenge him? The experts present were curious. Under such circumstances, there should be no one who would challenge the young man. As long as one was smart, they should be able to see how powerful he was. None of the forces that came this time were a match for him. Even if 2 forces joined forces, it would not be enough. Sure enough, as time passed quickly, the battles on the other 8 arenas had also completely ended, and their respective champions had emerged. Gui Yuan sect, White Flame sect, Fire Dragon Society, Heaven Severing sect, Scarlet Wind Pavilion, Mad Blade sect, Purple Light Sword sect, Blue Fire sect. There were a total of 8 sects, and they were all third-rate forces in the Chaos realm. Every one of them was extraordinary, and they were not far from being second-rate forces. Green Sanctuary faction and Xianjian faction are both unfortunate. They should have been strong enough to occupy a spot. Someone in the crowd sighed. The Xianjian sect was tricked by the Green Sanctuary sect. In the end, he was also defeated by the Bawang sect. Both of their strengths were extremely close to the level of second-rate powers, and they were originally the strongest contenders in the Alliance Conference. Many people felt that it was a pity that they had been eliminated this time. Of course, there were other forces like the Green Sanctuary sect and the Xianjian sect. Time passed quickly, and the final time passed quickly. 2 hours have passed, and there are no more challenges. The Bawang sect has obtained the right to 2 arenas. The middle-aged man in charge of the conference suppressed the strange feeling in his heart and announced to everyone. Since the beginning of the Alliance Conference, this was probably the first time such a situation had happened. A mountain sect occupying 2 spots. If this had happened in the past, it would have been an earth-shattering matter. However, on this day, such a strange thing had really happened, and everyone had witnessed it with their own eyes. Does the Bawang sect have any other young experts? That's 40 spots. If they don't have enough people, it would be a waste. Suddenly, someone thought of this and was filled with envy and jealousy. If the Bawang sect only sent this young man to participate in the conference, wouldn't it mean that 39 spots would be wasted? If that was really the case, it would be too much of a bully. Many sects did not even have a single spot and could only look on helplessly. As for the Overlord sect, not only did they not take a sh*t, they even took 40 of them in one go. Wasn't that infuriating? However, everyone was helpless as well. Who asked the young man to be so strong? This was the result of fighting on his own. If his own disciples were as good as him, no one would be able to say anything even if he went and challenged all 10 arenas. This is fate. The Alliance Conference is held once every 50 years. If we miss it, so be it. Someone sighed, expressing deep helplessness. He really did it. On the side of the Xianjian sect, Ji Tianfu, Ji Hanhua, Yuanshuan, Chen Chuan, Shun Hong, Yi Haokong, and the others could not hide the bitter smile on their faces. At this time, they were already a little numb, and it was difficult for them to be as shocked as they were at the beginning. This is the pass for the next round of the conference. Keep it well, and use this pass to participate in the next round of the conference. Above the arena, the middle-aged man of the Yuan Emperor realm rose into the air again. With a wave of his hand, a black shadow sprinkled down like raindrops, falling onto the arena. These black shadows were caught by the experts on the arena. When they took a look, they were black objects half the size of a palm. They looked like gold, but not gold, like jade, but not jade. They were warm to the touch, and the texture was excellent. Invisibly, there was a special energy flowing in them. However, if one did not look carefully, it would be difficult to detect. Is this the pass? The disciples of the 8 major sects each held a pass in their hands, and their faces were filled with excitement. As long as they had the pass, they would be able to enter the next round of the conference and compete with the geniuses of the first and second class forces. That was the real test. A total of 40 pass. We really struck it rich. Among everyone, only Su-yi had obtained 40 pass talismans. He could not hold all of them with both hands, and had to use his clothes to carry them. Su-yi was grinning from ear to ear, and his eyes shone with green light. Looking at the pass talismans in his hands, it was as if he was looking at a small mountain of primordial stones. He was the only one in the Bawang sect. If he were to sell all of the remaining 39 pass talismans, he would definitely make a considerable amount of money. At the thought of this, Su-yi could not help but feel excited. "Kid, what are you so proud of? Why aren't you leaving?" At this moment, Merciless West's voice rang in Su-yi's ears. Only he could hear it. It was the art of telepathy. Su-yi calmed himself down, jumped down from the arena, and returned to the Bawang sect. Then, he saw Ji Tianfu and the rest of the Xianjian sect walking towards him from afar. "Let's go back first," Su-yi said to Merciless West, Green Emperor, Yin-Yang Emperor of Hell, and the rest with a smile, pretending that he did not see them. The group from the Overlord sect quickly left, leaving Ji Tianfu, who had been waiting for a long time, in vain. "That kid is trying to avoid me?" Ji Tianfu raised his eyebrows, looking a little unhappy. Initially, he wanted to get close to Su-yi and ask him for some places so that the Xianjian sect disciples could participate in the competition. Who knew that the kid seemed to be avoiding him, and disappeared without a trace. "Is something wrong with Su-yi?" Ji Hanua, who was standing beside her, asked. "The battle is over. What's wrong with him?" Ji Tianfu rolled his eyes at his daughter, and said angrily, "He can't hide. Let's go to the inn and find him." Having said that, he asked Yuan Xuan to bring the Xianjian sect disciples back to their residence, and then he and Ji Hanua went to the inn where Su-yi was staying. Ji Tianfu had made up his mind. No matter what, he had to get a few places today. That kid got 40 places on his own. Looks like Ji Tianfu is going to look for him. Not long after the Xianjian sect disciples left, another group of people came to the place where the Bawang sect disciples were staying. These people were led by 2 old men, and there was a conspicuous man and a woman. They were from Liuha sect. They originally wanted to congratulate Su-yi, but seeing Ji Tianfu's expression, it seemed like he was familiar with the young man. "Elder Feng, Elder Gu, let's go first. Liuha sect did not get a place, and it's useless for us to stay in 9-Star City. Let's go back." Lin Donghao thought for a while, and said to the 2 old men beside him, "Actually, you can also see the next round of the conference. That is the real heavenly pride battle. The best disciples of the first and second-rate forces will be there. It will be good for you to observe more." Elder Feng Qizong replied without hesitation. "Elder, you're right. However, we can't participate in it, so it's meaningless for us to observe. If we can get a place." Lin Bingyao shook her head slightly, and her face was full of regret. As long as one was an outstanding member of the younger generation, they hoped to be able to participate in the second round of the conference. However, there were hundreds of forces that signed up in the Chaos Territory. Only 10 of them could make it to the end, and this time, there were only 9. It was a pity that Liuha sect could not get one of them. That young man from the Bawang sect still has 39 places. Why don't we ask him for a few? Anyway, there are more places, and it would be a waste if he doesn't use them. If he is willing, we can let a few people from Lioha sect enter the second round to see it. It would be a worthwhile trip. Suddenly, Elder Gu, who had been silent, frowned and said. When the few people next to him heard this, their eyes lit up, and then they all smiled bitterly. That young man is at most an acquaintance. Maybe he doesn't even know who we are. Why should we ask him for a few places? Lin Donghao shrugged and said the truth. They had come all the way here to congratulate the young man from the Overlord sect. They wanted to get closer to him so that when they were in the same area in the future, they could help each other out. They also wanted to avoid becoming enemies with such a terrifying person. But unfortunately, the other party ran too fast, and he couldn't find his shadow in an instant. Chapter 1050. The people from the Six Unity sect left the square and soon disappeared. All the people who came to watch the battle or participate in the preliminaries, as well as the 8 sects who obtained the final qualification, were overjoyed and left one after another. Su Yi and the others returned to the inn. Not long after, they saw Ji Tianfu come to their door. Sect Leader Ji, Miss Hanhua, please take a seat first. I'll be done here soon. If there's anything, we'll talk later. Su Yi hurriedly called for Ji Tianfu and Ji Hanhua, the father and daughter, and called for the waiter to bring some tea. Then, he turned his head and looked at Huang Jian, who was sitting at the table and writing on a piece of white paper. What are you writing? Ji Hanhua was curious. She stretched her head and looked at the words on the paper. Write like this, write like this. Each slot is sold for 50,000 yuan. If you buy more than 10 slots, you can get a 20% discount. Su Yi stood beside the table and pointed. Huang Jian listened to him and wrote everything down on a piece of paper. Ji Tianfu, who had just picked up the tea and was about to take a sip, moved his ears and was stunned. Su Yi, are you selling the slots? Ji Tianfu's expression changed and he quickly asked. He came here to ask Su Yi for some slots. He did not expect that Su Yi would want to sell the slot. This made Ji Tianfu a little anxious. Moreover, according to the words just now, each slot was sold for 50,000 yuan? 1-star primordial stones? Ji Tianfu immediately became excited. If this was the case, he could get 20 to 30 slots at once and send all the disciples of the Xianjian sect to the second round of the test to gain experience. That's right. Su Yi nodded and said to Ji Tianfu without raising his head, I'm the only one from the Bawang sect who can participate in the next round of the competition. The remaining 39 slots can't be wasted. If I can sell them for some primordial stones, it's more or less good. 50,000 2-star primordial stones per slot is not very expensive. What? When Ji Tianfu heard this, he immediately became anxious. He dug his ears, as if he was afraid that he had misheard. He anxiously said, What did you say? 50,000 2-star origin stones? As he spoke, he widened his eyes and looked at Su Yi with extreme fear in his eyes, as if he was frightened. Of course, such a precious quota can't be sold for 50,000 star essence stones, right? That would be too cheap. Su Yi nodded and spoke in a matter-of-fact manner. This, Ji Tianfu's face alternated between green and white as he cursed in his heart. He really wanted to say, Damn it, why don't you just go rob me? Ji Tianfu cursed in his heart. 50,000 2-star essence stones for a spot, and he had wanted to buy 20 spots. Adding up to a total of over 1 million 2-star essence stones, it was equivalent to over 100 million 1-star essence stones. Even though Xianjian faction could afford to fork out such a huge sum of money, it would still be a huge loss for them. Beside Ji Tianfu, Ji Hanhua's expression was not any better. The young girl looked at Su Yi and then looked at her father. She opened her mouth but did not say anything. Sect Master Ji, do you want it? Seeing that we have a good relationship, I can sell it to you at a 40% discount. When Huang Jian was almost done writing, Su Yi stood up and said to Ji Tianfu with a smile. Then, he glanced at Ji Tianfu's expression and suddenly said in surprise, "Hey, Sect Master Ji, why is your face so ugly?" Ji Tianfu did not answer immediately. His originally ugly face actually showed some signs of loosening up at this moment. If 50,000 star essence stones became 30,000, this price could be accepted even if one pinched their nose. However, it still made one feel uncomfortable. But now Ji Tianfu understood a lot in his heart. It seemed that Su Yi was still a kid who cared about relationship. This made things easier for him. He could negotiate the price. 33,000 two-star essence stones is still a little too expensive. I will not beat around the bush with you. Give me a 40% discount. If you give me a 40% discount, I want 20 slots. Ji Tianfu suddenly stretched out his middle finger and waved it in front of Su Yi. He looked at him seriously and said. Looking at Ji Tianfu's expression, Su Yi was stunned at first. Then, he smiled faintly and said, "Since Sect Master Ji is so forthright, I, Su Yi, would be too stingy. That would be too outrageous. Let's do as Sect Master Ji said. 40% discount, 20,000 two-star essence stones for one slot. 20 slots, that would be 400,000 two-star essence stones." After Su Yi finished speaking, he directly took out 20 passage talismans from his spatial bag and placed them on the table. He asked, "Sect Master Ji, do you want to pay now or on credit?" Looking at the passage talismans, Ji Tianfu revealed a happy expression. He put his hand on the table and said generously, "Let's pay now. 400,000 two-star essence stones. I can still afford it." He also took out a spatial bag. After checking it for a while, he directly threw it to Su Yi. Then, he kept the 20 passage talismans on the table. Sect Master Ji is really a straightforward person. Let's have dinner here tonight. Call all the disciples of Xianjian faction over. I will treat everyone to a drink. Su Yi checked the primeval essence stones in the spatial bag. Immediately, he smiled and said to Ji Tianfu with great enthusiasm, "Let's have a drink next time. After the Alliance Conference is over, we will go back and drink." Ji Tianfu shook his head and said, "Also, about the matter that I told you last time, I wonder what you think about it, Su Yi. Actually, Sect Master Ji should already have a result, right?" Su Yi smiled faintly and said softly. Of course, Su Yi knew that Ji Tianfu was referring to the alliance that he had proposed. During the preliminaries of the Alliance Conference, Su Yi had asked Xianjian faction to admit defeat and went against Green Sanctuary sect. This was considered to have made some things clear. Of course, Ji Tianfu understood that Su Yi had agreed to let Bawang sect and Xianjian faction form an alliance. "Alright. We will discuss the details when we get back. Everything will wait until the Alliance Conference is over. Today, I will not stay here any longer. I will take my leave first. See you later." Ji Tianfu looked at Su Yi and said. He then put his hands together and walked out of the house with Ji Hanua. After Su Yi sent the two of them out, he closed the door behind him. However, in the next moment, Ji Tianfu could vaguely hear an excited voice coming from the house. "I'm rich. I'm rich." The voice was very soft. However, with Ji Tianfu's strength, he could hear it clearly. Instantly, the sect leader of Xianjian faction frowned. "Father, what's wrong?" Ji Hanua looked up and asked. "Nothing. Let's go." Ji Tianfu smiled bitterly and said to his daughter. He could roughly guess what was going on. The 22,000 two-star primal stones for one slot was definitely within Su Yi's expectations. In other words, the price could still be negotiated. However, Ji Tianfu did not think too much about it. He was already satisfied to be able to get 20 slots. "Kid, can you not be such a money grubber?" In the house, Merciless West said helplessly to Su Yi. Regardless of whether it was the last time Ji Tianfu was here or the negotiation just now, Merciless West had been alone at the side and did not participate in it at all. I am too excited. Sui laughed and was filled with excitement. 20,000 primal stones for one slot was the price that Sui had thought of from the beginning. To be honest, he had originally planned to give some slots to Xianjian faction. After all, he was the one who asked them to come down from the arena and challenged Green Sanctuary faction and Sun Blaze faction at the same time. Other than that, Sui felt that Ji Tianfu was quite trustworthy. Since Ji Tianfu had helped him a lot, he was willing to give some of the slots away. However, what Sui did not expect was that Ji Tianfu did not even try to bargain with him. Instead, he gave him a price without hesitation. Naturally, Sui could not reject the primal stones that were given to him. He had no choice but to accept them. Most importantly, Sui was in need of money. Spiritual Treasures faction still had a huge debt of nearly 1 billion waiting for him to pay back. Half of the 1 year had passed. Sui was very anxious. I'll compensate them in other ways in the future. Sui felt that he had let Xianjian faction down this time. All he could do was to give them some benefits in the future. There are still 19 slots left. Boss, what do you plan to do? Handsome Su jumped onto the table and asked. Before Sui could answer, Merciless West said, "You have to be careful when you deal with these 19 slots. If the 7-star Sword School, Gimdeo sect, or Green Sanctuary faction were to buy them, I'm afraid that they will bring you a lot of trouble in the conference later on." After listening to Merciless West's reminder, Sui nodded gently to show that he agreed. The young disciples of those factions were no match for Sui. They would not be able to defeat him even if they all went up against him. However, if they were to secretly sabotage him in the conference later on, it would definitely bring him some trouble. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that these people were Sui's enemies. Allowing them to participate in the conference to benefit from it and increase the strength of his enemies was something that Sui could not do. Actually, I already have a target, which is the Liuhe sect. If they are willing to buy all of them, this matter will be perfect. Sui rubbed his chin and thought of those people that he had only nodded to. The Liuhe sect is not weak. You have now offended the 7-star Sword School, Gimdeo sect, and Green Sanctuary faction at the same time. At the same time, you have also joined forces with Xianjian sect. If you can pull the Liuhe sect to your side, there is a high chance that you will rise quickly and become a new third-rate faction. Merciless West thought for a while and said to Sui. This was something that Sui had considered many times. The Bawang sect now had many top experts. They were not weaker than those third-rate factions. In fact, they were even stronger. What they lacked now was the basic and core strength. If they wanted to rise successfully, it would not be possible to rely on Merciless West, Green Emperor, and Yin Yang Emperor of the Underworld. However, the Bawang sect did not have any foundation. Chapter 1051. Actually, there is another way. While Sui was thinking, the Yin-Yang Ghost Emperor next to him said, Master, you can distribute the 19 places to recruit experts to join the Bawang sect. I believe that many individual cultivators will be willing to join the Bawang sect under this temptation. It's a good idea, but it's also risky. Sui nodded, then shook his head. He then said, If that's the case, all the loose cultivators who join will be aiming for a spot in the Grand Assembly. They won't be able to feel a sense of belonging to the Overlord sect. As soon as he said that, all the people present nodded in agreement. Sui had always been like this. Only by becoming one of his own people could they get benefits from him. On the other hand, if he used benefits to entice others to join him, he could not be sure whether the people he recruited would be disloyal. I'd better go and find the people of the Liuhe sect. I should have asked Ji Tianfu more about the Liuhe sect, Sui said again. Then he did not delay and left the inn with the Green Emperor and the Yinyang Ghost Emperor. First, he found the Xianjian sect according to the route Su Xiaoshui had told him. He asked Ji Tianfu about the Liuhe sect, and said that he intended to form an alliance with them and sell the remaining places to them. Ji Tianfu was surprised by Su Yi's arrival and what he said. However, he did not hide anything and said directly, the Liuhe sect and the Xianjian sect don't have much dealings with each other. They don't have many grievances with the Xianjian sect. In addition, they have a good reputation in that area. Sect leader Lin Zhenyang is not a treacherous and cunning person. But if you want to form an alliance, you'd better go back and talk about it. With such an answer, Su Yi was relieved. He inquired about the whereabouts of the Liuhe sect and went to find them with the Green Emperor and the Yinyang Ghost Emperor. But before he left, he asked Chen Chuan, Shen Hong and Yi Haokong, the 3 rogue cultivators, to go to the inn where he lived and wait for him there. Looking at how Su Yi was behaving, Ji Tianfu was relieved. The fact that Su Yi came to ask him about this meant that he trusted Xianjian sect a lot. For some reason, Ji Tianfu felt a little happy about this. Su Yi soon found the residence of Liuhe sect. When he arrived, more than 20 people had already packed up and were preparing to leave 9-Star City overnight. When Su Yi explained his intention, Elder Feng Qizong, Elder Guming, Lin Donghao, Lin Bingyao, and the others were astounded. Is there such a good thing in the world? Elder Feng Qizong was stunned and couldn't help but mutter in his heart. They had planned to get close to Su Yi and ask for a few places. They didn't dare to think about too many places. If Lin Donghao and Lin Bingyao could enter the second round of the Alliance Conference, it would be worthwhile. However, the helpless thing was that Liuhe sect and Overlord sect were not familiar with each other at all. They could not brace themselves to go to the Overlord sect just because they had met a few times. If the Bawang sect didn't agree, wouldn't they be disgraced? I still have 16 places to sell to you. The same price as Xianjian sect, 22,000 2-star primordial stones per place. That's a total of 320,000. Su Yi intended to leave 3 places for Chen Chu and the other 2. Therefore, Liuhe sect could only sell 16 places to them. This price is acceptable. Lin Donghao, Lin Bingyao, and the 2 elders all nodded when they heard this. After the 2 sides reached an agreement, Lin Donghao smiled and cupped his fists to Su Yi and said, Brother Su Yi, if the Bawang sect has any problems in the future, you can come to me, Lin Donghao and Liuhe sect. As long as we can do it, we will do it. Lin Donghao knew in his heart that if these 16 places were really auctioned, it would definitely be more than 22,000 2-star primordial stones. If Liuhe sect accepted it, they would also be indebted to the Bawang sect. Otherwise, you can't buy this opportunity with money. Su Yi didn't stay in Liuhe sect for long and left. The entire Liuhe sect looked at the back of the young man disappearing, and each of them sighed deeply in their hearts, but it was immediately replaced by boundless joy. Now we don't have to go back immediately. I didn't expect that we can still participate in the next round of the conference. The Alliance Conference, which was held once every 50 years, was a rare event for people under the age of 30. The most important thing was that the primary conference was to select 10 forces, and it was only a competition. However, in the second round, those who participated could obtain huge benefit. If there were enough opportunities, they might be able to obtain unimaginable gains. Many people could even cross several realms in one go, and it was normal to break through the threshold of the Origin Void Realm. With such a big benefit, no one would not be tempted. Therefore, 22,000 2-star primordial stones for a place was definitely a good deal. If one was lucky, they could obtain even greater benefits. Su Yi went all the way back, and then under the protection of Merciless West, Green Emperor, Yinyang Ghost Emperor, Devouring Spirit Emperor, and Huang Jian, he entered the mysterious space. In order to prevent handsome Su from going out and causing trouble, Su-yi also pulled him in. In 7 days, the real alliance conference will begin. I have to go into seclusion for a few days to cultivate the Yuanyang heavenly bone. Su-yi murmured, and found a place to sit cross-legged in the mysterious space. His gaze swept across the vast space. In the small pool of spiritual liquid, a large amount of spiritual liquid had begun to accumulate. It released a tranquil aura that could make one feel refreshed just by smelling it. Then, Su-yi saw a piece of green stone placed aside. It was the one that was moved from the 7-star sword school's mine. Ju Soul Stone, what kind of magical effect does this thing have? Su-yi muttered. Last time, when Merciless West went into seclusion in the mysterious space, he also saw this stone. He told Su-yi that this thing was called the Giant Soul Stone, and it had some magical effects on the soul. At that time, Merciless West was also shocked. He did not know where Su-yi had obtained such a treasure, which made him a little puzzled. From his brother's expression, Su-yi could tell that this thing was definitely an extraordinary treasure. It was no wonder that the 7-star sword school valued it so much. However, because Merciless West was in a hurry to go into seclusion, he did not say much to Su-yi. He only said that this thing could be used to train the soul, and that there were more uses for it that could be developed. I'll slowly study it when I have time in the future. Let's start cultivating the Yuanyang heavenly bone. Su-yi did not hesitate. He first drank a bottle of spiritual liquid, then slowly closed his eyes and began cultivating the Origin Supreme technique. The 5th level of the Origin Demon Body, the Yuanyang heavenly bone, was to absorb endless spiritual qi, turn it into one's own vitality, and gather it in the Great Void Divine Sea. Then, the vigorous vitality would be poured into the heart of Heavenly Sun, turning into the true Yang fire, and then used to temper the bones in the body. This process was extremely slow. The true Yang fire consumed a lot of vitality. Even if Su-yi's Great Void Divine Sea was filled with vitality, which was many times more than other people of the same level, it was still difficult to withstand such an intense consumption. The first time he used up all the vitality in the entire Great Void Divine Sea, he could only temper half of a rib bone. For bones like the leg bone, arm bone, and other bones, it would probably take many times before he could completely temper them. Su-yi was a little anxious. If he continued to cultivate at this speed, it would take him a few years to successfully cultivate this level. Not to mention the immense pain in the process, Su-yi could not afford to wait at all for such a long time. Huff, soon, Su-yi entered a meditative state. His body was surrounded by 4 rays of light that flowed slowly. However, in his meridians there was a huge explosion that sounded like thunder. As time passed, Su-yi's chest emitted a crimson light. It was like burning iron, and there was a high temperature. He was sweating all over, and his lips were trembling in pain because of the true Yang fire. So boring. Not far away, Su Xiaoshui began to wail after looking at Su-yi for a while. He also knew the intention of his boss. Now that there were many experts in 9-Star City, there were many Origin Emperors. If he went out at this time, Su Xiaoshui knew the consequences. Therefore, he had no complaints about being locked in the mysterious space. It was just that it was really boring here. Suddenly, his eyes flickered as he looked at the small pool of spirit liquid, and his eyes began to spin around. After a while, Su Xiaoshui flapped his wings and flew out. He plunged into the spiritual liquid pool and rolled around, enjoying himself immensely. In 9-Star City, the preliminaries of the Alliance Conference had ended. However, the city did not become deserted. Instead, it became more lively. There were indeed some forces that chose to leave after losing, but more people stayed. Everyone knew that the second round of the Alliance Conference would be the real competition between the geniuses. I wonder how strong the young experts of the 3 first-rate forces, Blue Cloud Palace, 9-Star Valley, and Blood Sun sect are. I wonder if there are any Origin Void Realm experts. In the city, some people were talking about this in some restaurants. There might really be an Origin Void Realm expert. None of the 3 first-rate forces are simple. There are many experts in their sects. Let's see who will be the final winner this time. The 7 second-rate forces are not bad either. Their overall strength may not be comparable to the first-rate forces. However, if 1 or 2 outstanding people emerge from the younger generation, it's not impossible for them to suppress their peers. The show is about to begin. I'm really looking forward to it. There's also that young man from the Bawang sect. With his age and strength, in terms of talent, he's definitely a once-in-a-lifetime talent. However, it's hard to say whether he can gain any advantage in the upcoming Alliance Conference. All kinds of discussions spread in different places. Everyone had a strong interest in those geniuses. Chapter 1052. Until now, no one seems to know his name, right? After a few days, many people were surprised to find that the young man's name was still unknown. There is news. The young man's name is Su-yi. Someone saw him looking for people from the Liuhe sect and the Xianjian sect. He seems to have a good relationship with these 2 forces. Not long after the question was asked, someone yelled out. When the news came out, the name Su-yi swept across the entire 9-star city like a hurricane. Su-yi. What an amazing young man. In a restaurant, a middle-aged man was sitting alone. He was in a white robe, had a green beard and a white face. His forehead was full and he had an extraordinary temperament. Vaguely, there was a special power around him that seemed to isolate him from the others. Under this aura, countless rogue cultivators would unconsciously avoid him. At the same time, it was as if this person did not exist. This was a unique aura. Some experts noticed this and deliberately avoided him, not daring to disturb this middle-aged man. When Su-yi was defending the ring, this middle-aged man appeared several times. Every time, he was amazed by Su-yi. Hearing the discussions of the people around him, he murmured the name Su-yi. Then, he raised his wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Those who failed to defend the ring but performed outstandingly have been recruited by the experts of the Alliance. Among the rogue cultivators, there was another piece of news. This was an old rule. In every Alliance meeting's primary selection, in addition to selecting the 10 forces, they would also test the younger generation. For those outstanding people, the first and second-rate forces would be willing to take them in and give them treasures. The sects of those who were selected were usually the vassals of the first and second-rate forces. In other words, no matter how many benefits were given, the benefits would not flow to outsiders. Jiang Su of the Green Sanctuary sect, Yuan Xuan of the Xianjian sect, Lin Donghao and Lin Bingyao of the Six Sword sect were all selected by the experts of the Alliance. Other than that, there were also quite a few powerful rogue cultivators who were chosen by the Wisdom Eye. Of course, whether or not these people would accept the benefits bestowed by the Alliance's experts was entirely up to them. However, under normal circumstances, no one would be willing to give up such benefits. After tomorrow, the real Alliance conference will begin. Time passed extremely quickly. In the blink of an eye, 6 days had passed. During this period, Su-yi had been in seclusion in the mysterious space. It was also on this day that he finally opened his eyes and exhaled a mouthful of foul air. The great void divine sea in his body had been drained several times, and now it was full again. It feels really good. He carefully sensed the changes in his body. The biggest change in his body was his ribs. Over the past few days, his efficiency had been pretty good. He had refined 6 ribs in one go. Most of his chest had already been refined into primordial yang heavenly bones, leaving only a quarter that had yet to be refined. This efficiency was already fast enough. The main reason was because of the dense spiritual energy in the mysterious space and the powerful spiritual liquid. When a large number of ribs had become primordial yang heavenly bones, Su-yi also clearly felt that there were obvious changes in his body. Bones were the pillars of the body, the bridge that connected the blood and the flesh. When more than 10 primordial yang heavenly bones had been refined, Su-yi only felt that he was transforming from the outside to the inside. He could faintly feel that once all the bones in his body were transformed one day, there would be an even more miraculous change. What kind of origin does the primordial chaos supreme technique have? Su-yi could not help but sigh. All the strength he had now was inseparable from the mystery of the primordial chaos supreme technique. He raised his head and looked at the huge space. He wanted to know what kind of place this was and what kind of secrets were hidden behind all of this. Su-yi's gaze turned. When it swept across a certain place, his movements suddenly froze. There was only a small pit in his line of sight. It was surrounded by gravel, like the mouth of a well. That was the small pool that produced the spiritual liquid. At this moment there was a figure lying directly in the pool, sleeping soundly. Little handsome Su, King ruined my spiritual liquid again. Su-yi's voice suddenly rose by an octave, almost screaming out loud. He ran to the side of the small pool, picked up a small bird, and threw it to the ground. My spiritual liquid, Su-yi was almost howling. Looking at the dried-up pool, he wanted to cry but had no tears. Before he went into seclusion, a small half of the pool of spiritual liquid had appeared here. Now there was not a single drop left. He could only see the wet bottom of the pool. Such a huge loss made Su-yi's heart ache. "Boss!" Little handsome Su was thrown to the ground and slowly woke up. When he saw Su-yi, he called out, "You wastrel! Is this spiritual liquid for you to bathe in?" Su-yi's eyes spat fire. He turned his head and picked up little handsome Su again, roaring at him. "Boss!" Seeing that Su-yi was angry, little handsome Su quickly lowered his head and admitted his mistake. "I didn't mean it. I just wanted to sleep." His voice was very weak and he seemed to be wronged. However, Su-yi did not buy it. This was not the first time that little handsome Su had done this. Previously, he ruined the herb field. This time, he ruined a small half of the pool of spiritual liquid. At the thought of this, Su-yi's anger flared up. He was not a stingy person. If little handsome Su really wanted the spiritual liquid, he would definitely give it to him. However, he could not use the spiritual liquid to bathe. No matter how rich he was, he could not squander it like this. "Boss!" Little handsome Su still wanted to say something, but when he met Su-yi's murderous eyes, he immediately became weak. But soon, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he said happily, "Boss, I'm about to break through to the Demon Emperor realm." As expected, Su-yi's expression immediately changed. Hearing that little handsome Su was about to break through to the Demon Emperor realm, Su-yi's expression became serious. "How far are you from the Demon Emperor realm? Do you want to try it in seclusion for a while?" Su-yi's expression became serious this time as he asked. If little handsome Su could really break through to the Demon Emperor realm, Su-yi would be willing to give him half of the pool of spiritual liquid, let alone the small half of the pool of spiritual liquid. Once little handsome Su's phoenix bloodline reached the threshold of the Demon Emperor realm, he would definitely be very terrifying. Su-yi regarded him as his brother. If there was something good for little handsome Su, he would be very willing to do it. Faced with Su-yi's change of attitude, little handsome Su was embarrassed, which was rare for him. He said with a blush, "I'm almost there, but I can feel that this is not a matter of breaking through. It will probably take a little more time. When the time comes, success will follow naturally." "Is that so?" Su-yi raised his eyebrows. He carefully sensed that little handsome Su's aura was indeed much stronger than before. Obviously, He was not lying because he was afraid of being scolded. However, after hearing Little Handsome Sue's explanation, Sue calmed down from his excitement. It seemed that if Little Handsome Sue really wanted to break through to the Demon Emperor realm, it would not be as simple as simply providing sufficient energy or going into seclusion. This guy was completely different from others. However, in comparison, Sue only felt that Little Handsome Sue's breakthrough was a little too easy. After soaking in the pool of spiritual liquid and having a good sleep, he was about to reach the Demon Emperor realm unknowingly. On the other hand, he was still at the second level of the Origin Void stage after cultivating bitterly. There was still some distance to the third level. I'm worse than a bird. At the end of the day, Sue still only summed it up with 4 words. If you need anything in the future, just ask. Don't waste it like this. This is already the second time. If there's a next time, I'll beat you up directly. Sue glared at Little Handsome Sue and threatened him. Little Handsome Sue nodded his bird head and did not dare to refute at all. He was extremely obedient. Let's go. The Alliance Conference is about to begin. When the time comes, stay with Big Brother. Be careful to conceal yourself and don't let the powerhouses discover you. Sue reminded Little Handsome Sue one last time before he walked out of the mysterious space and appeared in the room. Rumble. Not long after Sue appeared, a powerful aura suddenly appeared outside the inn. A series of sounds of wheels crushing the void came from afar and approached like the rumbling of thunder. Whoosh! Suddenly, an uproar broke out on the street. Many people's voices could be heard, and it was very lively for a time. What's going on? Sue and the others quickly walked out and came to the street. They looked up. To the east of 9-Star City, there was a huge gilded carriage in the sky. It was fast approaching with a menacing aura. Pulling the carriage were 8 powerful savage beasts. Their bodies were muscular and their auras were fierce. They looked like bears and apes. Their fur was as bright as red silk and was faintly glowing. Red Bamboo Bear Ape. So these are savage beasts. How terrifying! Among the crowd, there were some rogue cultivators who were looking at them in shock. The 8 savage beasts were terrifying. They could feel their ferocious aura from afar. It was likely that each of them had reached the level of Demon True Realm. Red Bamboo Bear Ape as the carriage. Those are from Boundless Palace. The person sitting in the carriage must be Boundless Palace's Shang Wangchen. Someone who was knowledgeable quickly determined the identity of the person who came. Boundless Palace? What a grand display! Sue looked up and could not help but be shocked by such a huge scene. Of course, he knew about Boundless Palace. It was one of the 7 second-rate forces in the Chaos Realm and was very powerful. Relatively speaking, the younger generation of Boundless Palace was definitely much more powerful than the Gimdeo sect. For example, the 7-Star Sword School and Xianjian sect were extremely close to second-rate forces. However, they were only close to the bottom of the second-rate forces. Chapter 1053. Therefore, even though Sue was already at the Origin Void Realm and there were many Origin Emperors in the Overlord sect, he would not underestimate the people from the 7 major second-rate forces. It would not be easy to catch up with the foundation that they had accumulated over the years. Sue watched for a while and watched as the carriage pulled by the Red Bamboo Bear Ape entered the city and disappeared from his sight. From the beginning to the end, Sue did not see the people from Boundless Palace and the strongest person among the younger generation, Shang Wangchen. Walala, just then, a gust of wind swept across the sky above 9-Star City. Then, he saw a huge ferocious bird spreading its wings and flying towards him. There were dozens of figures on the ferocious bird. Other than some older people, the leader was a gloomy young man. His face was pale and lifeless, and he looked extremely terrifying. The ferocious bird under his feet had a similar temperament. Its pupils were white and it was emitting a gloomy aura. That is the Hell Thunder Eagle. It is rare to see it. Su-yi raised his eyebrows as he recognized the ferocious bird. It is the people from the Dark Een sect. The young man leading them must be their chief disciple, Sang Ming. Soon, the surrounding people recognized the identity of the people who came. The Dark Een sect was one of the 7 second-rated forces in the Chaos region. It was similar to the Boundless Palace that had appeared previously. Tomorrow, the secret realm of ominous spirits will open and the Alliance Conference will begin. Today, 9-Star City will be more lively. Many people from the first and second-rated forces will definitely arrive today. The secret realm of ominous spirits was the venue for the second round of the Alliance Conference. It was an independent space. Listening to the discussions around him, Su-yi knew that today was the day when 9-Star City would truly become lively. The successors of the major forces would arrive at 9-Star City. It was a grand banquet for the geniuses. Su-yi also started to get serious. After all, the number of participants from the first and second-rate forces was several times more than the number of participants from the third-rate forces and below. 3 first-rated forces, 80 participants from each force. 7 second-rated forces, 50 participants from each force. In addition to the 7 third-rate forces, each of them can send 20 people to enter the secret realm of ominous spirit. In total, there are 790 people. Su-yi did some mental calculations. 790 young experts, this was an extremely powerful force. Among the younger generation of those first and second-rate forces, there were probably people who had already stepped into the origin void stage. Su-yi was naturally not afraid, but if they became enemies, it would be very troublesome. Boundless Palace Shang Wangchen, Dark Een Gate Sang Ming. Su-yi muttered these 2 names, then called out to Merciless West and the others, "There's nothing to see, let's go." Turning around, the group returned to the inn. Not long after he left, the crowd on the street let out a series of exclamations again. As time passed, a disciple from a powerful force would come every once in a while, attracting the attention of countless people. It wasn't until halfway through the afternoon that the people from the 7 second-rate factions had all arrived. Crimson Sun Sect, Yin Shangyuan. Jade Tripod Alchemy Clan, Ruan Zhua. Heavenly Dipper Sect, Hong Jianxiu. Purple Shadow Tower, Shui Yuchan. Green Flame Sect, Wei Chongtian. In addition to Boundless Palaces Shang Wangchen and Dark Een Gates Sang Ming, these 7 people were the best of the 7 factions, leading the crowd with extraordinary strength. In fact, the most talked-about person was Shui Yuchan from the Purple Shadow Tower. She had a beautiful face, an ethereal temperament, and an elegant appearance, which attracted the attention of countless people. Moreover, she was not old, only 25 or 26 years old, which made her look even younger. Su-yi did not continue to pay attention to the arrival of these people, but he could still hear waves of exclamations. Other than the 7 second-rate factions, the arrival of the disciples from the 3 first-rate factions pushed the atmosphere in the city to a peak. Su-yi, who was staying in the inn, also grasped some information in his hands. Blue Cloud Palaces Shi-Su-Su and Qin Yuxing. 9-Star Valleys Jingqiran and Chao Yunfei. Blood Sun Sects Wu Jiao and Fu Dongxian. These 6 people were the strongest of the younger generation from the 3 first-rate factions, and compared to the young talents from the second-rate factions, they attracted more attention. At the same time, other than the names of these people spreading in the 9-Star City, the 2 words Su-yi also began to spread by word of mouth. Gradually, many people knew that the young man from the Bawang sect was called Su-yi. Su-yi, could it be? Some well-informed people soon thought of some of the rumors and couldn't help but be shocked. Other than countless small factions and rogue cultivators, the people from the top 10 factions of the Alliance also quickly learned of Su-yi's identity. At night, the 9-Star City was brightly lit. There were some individual mansions in the city, which were extraordinarily magnificent. Such places were where the people from the first and second-rate factions stayed in the Nine-Star City. As the experts of the Alliance, they naturally received special treatment, which was far from what the small factions and rogue cultivators could compare to. In one of the deep mansions, many people gathered. The leader was Elder Wu from the Tiangang sect. In addition, most of the others were from the younger generation, and they were led by a handsome young man. Such a person has appeared in this year's primary selection conference. It's really amazing, a young man said with endless amazement, and his face was full of disbelief. It is said that his name is Sui. Could he be the champion of the Middle State Sacred Martial Arts Conference? Someone murmured. It must be him. Yang Baikuan said that the boy has a bird with him. It must be the bird that he became sworn brothers with at the Sacred Martial Arts Conference. The handsome young man was the young master of the Tiangang sect, Hong Jianqiu. He nodded and said softly, "The Middle State Sacred Mountain is looking for him everywhere. I didn't expect that the boy would come to the Chaos Territory and cause such a big commotion. He is indeed extraordinary. This year's Alliance Conference will not be peaceful. You have to pay more attention to that boy. If you have the chance, kill him completely. Otherwise, he will become a huge disaster in the long run. The people around him are all very powerful, especially the suicidal Yama Merciless West. His name is known throughout the Chaos Territory." Elder Wu looked at the young experts of the Tiangang sect and said, "No matter what, the Gimdeo sect is a force that our Tiangang sect has supported. We hoped that they would be able to open up some situations, but they suffered such a huge loss at the hands of that boy. This debt must be repaid no matter what." His tone was very calm, and there was not much fluctuation in it. However, the group of young people in the hall could feel a murderous aura spreading out for no reason. He is just a young boy. How strong can he be? His performance in the primary selection conference was indeed dazzling, but it is far from enough. Hong Jianqiu's eyes flashed as he said in a deep voice. He knew in his heart that with his current strength, it might not be easy for him to achieve what Sui did in the primary selection conference. However, it was not difficult if he really wanted to do it. With his strength at the peak of the 9th level Origin Void stage, it was still possible for him to crush 40 disciples from a third-rate force by taking them out one by one. Moreover, the Bawang sect only had Sui as their only disciple, whereas their Tiangang sect could send 50 people into the secret realm of ominous spirits. These 50 people were not a motley crew like the 7-Star Sword School and the Gimdeo sect. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. It's better to be safe than sorry. After all, that boy made the Saint Mountain suffer a huge loss. This time, it's up to the young sect leader. However, killing that boy in the secret realm of ominous spirits is secondary. The most important thing is to obtain the benefits and improve our Tiangang sect's overall strength. Elder Wu looked at Hong Jianqiu and reminded him. "Don't worry, Elder Wu. I know what to do." Hong Jianqiu nodded, but the expression on his face did not seem to care. The plan to kill the Bawang sect's Sui was not only because of the Gimdeo sect, but it was also because of the significance of the fight between the younger generation. If they could kill that boy, they would definitely be famous in the world. While the people from the Tiangang sect were discussing Sui, the other first-rate and second-rate forces also voiced their own opinions. "Good boy. He's actually the champion of the Saint Martial Assembly and successfully escaped from the Saint Mountain's encirclement. After coming to the Chaos region, he caused a series of commotion. Such a young man is really hard to find in the world." A red-robed old man muttered where the Azure Cloud Hall was. He was one of the many powerhouses from the Alliance who had watched the combat tournament. "Sui, huh? I've heard of his name long ago, but I've never seen him before. I'll have to witness it this time." A young man beside the red-robed old man spoke out indifferently. On the other side, a woman in her 20s stood. Her complexion was smooth and her features were picturesque. She was beautiful and delicate. Sui, the woman, also silently muttered this name, and her beautiful brows unconsciously furrowed. She seemed to feel that this person seemed to be related to her in some way, but no matter how hard she thought, she could not recall it. After a while, the woman shook her head and stopped thinking about it. The champion of the Saint Martial Assembly, a disciple of the Xinjiang Gate, fought against many powerhouses from the Saint Mountain. Surrounded by enemies, he became sworn brothers. The 5 brothers shed their blood and resisted the Saint Mountain together, and finally escaped. Such actions are tantamount to giving the Saint Mountain a big slap in the face. I'm very curious, what kind of young man is he? It's an honor to meet him tomorrow. This time, I must spar with him. The champion of the Saint Martial Assembly? I must trample him under my feet and make him my stepping stone on the path of cultivation. Different places and different people had different thoughts about Sui. Chapter 1054. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the Alliance Conference. Countless people walked out of 9-Star City and gathered at the square where the previous matches had taken place. The people from the 9 sects who have obtained the passage talisman have already set off for the secret realm of ominous spirits. They should be arriving soon. The real competition is about to begin. I wonder who among the young people in the Chaos Territory will stand at the top. I'm really looking forward to it. The experts of the Alliance will project the situation in the secret realm of ominous spirit. We are in 9-Star City, and we can see the situation in the secret realm. We can only see a part of it, but it's still very powerful. Especially the final match, it will be projected from the beginning to the end. Countless disbanded cultivators and people from the small sects gathered at the place where the previous matches had taken place. At this time, strange stones were arranged on the 10 arenas. They flickered with light and released energy fluctuations. Not only the disbanded cultivators and small sects, but many of the older experts from the top 10 sects had also come to the square. They sat in the standalone stands and were ready to watch the upcoming grand competition. The Bawang sect has taken 2 matches and has 40 spots. However, they only have Sui. What a waste. You don't know, right? The 7-Star Sword School and the 6 Union sect took the remaining spots from Sui. Is that so? Then, there are a total of 11 third-rated sects participating in the Alliance Conference this time. Many people were surprised. They felt that the Alliance Conference was really strange and did not proceed according to common sense. The key was that all these strange things were caused by Sui. They could not help but sigh. Only 9 sects had obtained the spots for the preliminary selection. However, 11 third-rated sects could participate in the Alliance Conference, which was unprecedented. The huge square was crowded with people. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were jostling each other. Voila! Suddenly, there was a sound. In front of everyone's eyes, the strange stones on the 10 matches emitted a bright light at the same time. Suddenly, the light was projected into the air and formed a magnificent light screen. Look, the projection has begun. Someone shouted and pointed at the scene. Many people raised their heads and were curious about the scene. Only the people from the big sects could use such a method. It would definitely cost a lot. It's about to begin. In the crowd, a middle-aged man in a white robe was standing alone. He just stood there quietly, but it was as if he had formed an independent zone, isolating all the people with ordinary cultivations. Under the influence of this kind of invisible qi, many low-level Origin Emperor Realm experts consciously took a detour and didn't dare to get too close to this middle-aged man. Young Shangguan, do you want to sit on the stage? At this moment, an aged voice sounded. Only the white-robed middle-aged man heard it. The others didn't notice it at all. No, thank you, Senior. Thank you for your kindness. After the middle-aged man heard the voice, he turned his head to look at the viewing platform. He nodded to a red-robed old man and said with a voice transmission. Then, the middle-aged man with the surname Shangguan looked at the light screen above the arena again, waiting for the image to appear. Sigh. This young man is still so stubborn. The old man in a red robe on the stage was Elder Xie of the Green Cloud Hall. He had been here since the beginning of the grand meeting. He was here to watch the battle today. Elder Xie smiled bitterly when he saw that the middle-aged man had rejected him. He then sighed. Humph, that young man doesn't know what's good for him. Not only your Green Cloud Hall, but my Blood Sun sect and 9-Star Valley have also invited him many times to become an elder in our sections. At the very least, he can be a guest elder. But he has rejected us time and time again. Elder Bai of the Blood Sun sect, who was dressed in a green robe, snorted coldly. At the same time, he glanced at the middle-aged man in a white robe in the crowd and said unhappily, "Isn't everyone interested in his strength? He does have the ability to stand alone. There is no need for him to rely on our sex." Elder Tang, who was in a black robe, said coldly. He did not seem to care about all this. The middle-aged man was a rogue cultivator, but he was very strong. The 3 sects had always wanted to recruit him. However, over the years, the middle-aged man had rejected the 3 sects many times. To put it bluntly, he was not giving them any face. If one were to look deeper, the middle-aged man did have the right to be proud. This young man, Shangguan, is not simple, the old man in a red robe said softly and did not say anything else. Shangguan was naturally not as strong as the other first-rate sections. However, whether it was the Green Cloud Hall, 9-Star Valley, or the Blood Sun sect, none of the 3 sects dared to provoke the middle-aged man. Those who had nothing to lose were not afraid of those who wore shoes. Even the first-rate sects would be wary of a powerful rogue cultivator. It's out. The images are out. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the square. Under the gaze of the densely packed crowd, the stones on the 10 arenas shone brightly and projected into the void. There were 7 colors flowing within them. Then, the light screen above twisted and changed, and images appeared from it. Is that the entrance to the secret realm of ominous spirits? Many people exclaimed. They could see a magnificent scene from the light screen. 2 giant mountains stood tall, like a dragon raising its head. One on the left and one on the right, it looked like it could swallow the world. Between the 2 mountains there was a smooth cliff. It was so steep that it was difficult for spiritual apes to climb. A white light erupted between the 2 cliffs, and it was painful to look at. Near the mountain peak, hundreds of figures were scattered around. The barbaric beasts they were riding were like young ants in front of the giant mountain peak. Look, that's the Crimson Sun sect. The one in front is Yin Shangyuan. Someone pointed at the dozens of figures on the back of a savage beast and said, "Wow, that woman must be Shui Yuchan. She's so beautiful." Someone saw the beautiful figure of a woman. Her body was exquisite, and he could not help but exclaim. His eyes were glued to her. Sure Susu from the Green Cloud Hall. The most beautiful woman in the Chaos region. Suddenly, someone exclaimed. It was as if he had seen a ghost. His face was filled with disbelief. Under the gaze of this person, a woman in her 20s stood in the formation of one of the factions. Her dress fluttered in the wind. Her brows were like a painting, and her skin was tender. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she was as beautiful as autumn water. Compared to her, Shui Yuchan from the Purple Shadow Tower paled in comparison. But it was a pity that this woman's face was cold. She had an aura that kept people 1,000 miles away. She was proud and cold. Many people looked at her. While they admired her, they did not dare to have any blasphemous thoughts towards such a cold beauty. The top 10 factions are all here. The factions that passed the primary selection are not here yet. When another group of figures arrived at the mountain peak, many people retracted their thoughts and continued to look at the light screen in the air. The people from the various factions were also recognized by the spectators on the square. The Green Cloud Hall, 9-Star Valley, Blood Sun Sect, Dark Een Gate, Crimson Sun Sect, Jade Tripod Clan, Heavenly Dipper Clan, Boundless Palace, Purple Shadow Tower, and Green Flame Sect, the top 10 factions of the Chaos region were all here. They gathered in front of the white light of the two mountain peaks, and the factions that qualified for the primary selection 7 days ago had not appeared yet. The secret realm of ominous spirits has opened. You can enter now. At this time, outside the two mountain peaks, an elder spoke to the disciples of the top 10 factions. He indicated that they could pass through the white light and enter the secret realm. Shang Wangchen, let's go. Let's fight in the secret realm. On the side of the Heavenly Dipper Clan, the young master of the Heavenly Dipper Clan, Hong Jianxiu, said loudly. He used a sheathed long sword to point at a young man who was sitting on a carriage pulled by 8 red bamboo bear apes. At this time, the curtains around the carriage were rolled up. Many figures could be seen inside. The person in the lead was wearing a tall crown. His hair ribbon fluttered in the wind. He was dressed in a brocade robe with golden embroidery. It made him look extremely majestic. Faced with Hong Jianxiu's provocation, the young man named Shang Wangchen glanced at him indifferently. He said indifferently, "You can go in first. I'm very interested in Su Yi from the Bawang sect. I'll enter the secret realm after I see him." Upon hearing the two words, Su Yi, Hong Jianxiu's face unconsciously darkened. He snorted coldly and said, "A little Su Yi can make you, Shang Wangchen, think so highly of him. He'll definitely die in my hands." After saying that, Hong Jianxiu did not waste any time. He turned around and led his 50 disciples into the white light between the two mountain peaks. However, when he passed by the disciples of the top 3 factions, Hong Jianxiu subconsciously felt his heart tighten. Su Yi, huh? He'll definitely die in my hands. On the other side, a young man with a gloomy expression said. He did not waste any more time and directly flew into the secret realm. His body was swallowed by the white light. Let's go too. Anyway, after entering the secret realm, we'll be separated. It'll be difficult for us to meet up for a while. A disciple of a faction said, and then entered the secret realm one after another. As these factions began to move, most of the disciples of the top 10 factions also began to move. Many people had strange looks in their eyes. They were curious about Su Yi. However, in the end, not many people decided to stay. Let's go. On the side of the Ash Cloud Palace, Shi Susu and a young man led more than 70 disciples toward the secret realm. However, just as her body was about to be completely swallowed by the white light, Shi Susu suddenly sensed something and turned around abruptly. In her gaze, the figure of a 16 or 17-year-old boy appeared. He was also looking in her direction at the same time. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.